guys.
That's a great opening. Are we ready?
Fire away.
So it's my pleasure to introduce to you Claire Chang as one of Daniel Hand High School's recipients of the 2018-19 Connecticut Association of Public Schools Superintendent's Award. Claire is an exemplary scholar who is incredibly bright, highly motivated, and immensely dedicated. She has ambitiously tackled the most rigorous program of studies available while mastering the art of time management. Her industrious work ethic and persistent approach to her studies, coupled with an enthusiastic attitude and positive tone, make her a valued member of any classroom. Claire enjoys most academic disciplines, and she excels in all of them. Her persistent approach to her studies supports her conquering what others might find insurmountable. Teachers valued Claire in class due to her passionate, enthusiastic attitude and her appreciation for thoughtful debate. Claire leads her peers by example and helps set a positive tone in the classroom. Curious by nature and eager to learn, Claire genuinely enjoys learning for the sake of learning. She has pursued a variety of subjects at Daniel Hand outside of the core requirements in order to explore her diverse interests. One could expect that a student so dedicated to her studies might not have time to devote to extracurricular activities. Quite the opposite is true with Claire, as her commitment to her extracurricular pursuits is authentic. She involves herself with activities that are personally meaningful, and she dedicates her efforts to causes about which she is most passionate. Claire co-founded and co-leads a student-run gun control group called Violence to Voices that was instrumental in organizing a school-wide event on the date of the first National School Walkout. Claire is also a passionate musician determined to use her talent to benefit others. She and her sister perform annual benefit concerts for the Madison Food Pantry and play for residents of Watrous Nursing Home. As a natural leader, Claire is also an essential member of several clubs and organizations. People respect and trust Claire, and they look to her for guidance and support. What many people enjoy most about Claire is her cheerful, engaging personality. You comfortable? Claire is eternally positive and upbeat, and her exceptionally pleasant, agreeable, and congenial demeanor makes her always enjoyable to be around. Because she is so personable, she develops strong relationships with others and is very well liked by everyone with whom she interacts. Claire is a young woman of integrity and impeccable character. She is gracious, appreciative, honest, mature, and responsible. With a solid moral compass, Claire consistently strives to do the right thing. She has a strong sense of social justice and is unafraid to speak up or come to the aid of a student being mistreated or to defend against insensitive acts or comments. Despite all of her accomplishments, Claire remains solidly grounded and humble. She is an outstanding young adult, clearly deserving of this special recognition. Congratulations. Pictures now?
Yeah, quick picture. If you want to come in the
So you
middle.
come right in the middle.
This is Terry, this is Scott.
Nobody left me a camera.
Right here.
You good? We'll do one, then we got parents then too?
Yeah, and then.
Remember my heels
All right,
today.
that's the pictures. Here we go.
I got it. Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, one more. All right. Another one?
We're going to do one for official, for posterity.
Ready? Okay. Congratulations.
Yeah, mom and dad.
Mom and dad?
Come on up.
Right next to
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
daughter,
Yeah.
of course.
You could actually come up more.
Or not.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Congratulations, congratulations.
I'm not sure if it's better to go first or second. The anticipation of having you stand here.
I would lay that coffee bit up here.
All right. So, Part 2, it's my pleasure again to introduce to you Mackin McDonald as one of Daniel Hand High School's recipients of the 2018-19 Connecticut Association of Public Schools Superintendents Award. This academically successful, self-motivated young man is an important and contributing member of the highly competitive and incredibly successful Daniel Hand High School varsity football team. As a member of the team, Mackin participates in year-round physical training and is a leader on and off the field. His leadership off the field is obvious when it comes to community service commitments for his team. One of Mackin's favorite volunteer activities includes Reading for Character. This program allows Mackin the opportunity to participate in our elementary school story time when he reads books to younger students in our district. He is an excellent role model that many of our young Tigers look up to. As a student who has a strong desire to help others, Mackin leads and organizes Daniel Hand's football team's food drive for Shoreline Soup Kitchens. Mackin's leadership abilities, along with his desire to serve as a positive role model for his peers, make him an ideal and important contributing member of the Daniel Hand Football Leadership Council. Outside of his academics, and in addition to his football commitments, Mackin's athletic abilities earned him a 2-year membership to the junior varsity lacrosse team. As a clearly reflective young adult, and in order to balance all of his activities, Mackin decided to discontinue lacrosse to focus on other areas of interest. For example, Mackin's musical abilities have been met through his membership in the DHHS concert band. Due to strong leadership characteristics, Mackin is the section leader of the tubas. Mackin is a remarkable, self-motivated young adult who is driven to succeed. High achievement in the school arena is clearly a priority, as evidenced by incredible success in many of our most rigorous courses. In the classroom, Mackin is known for his excellent quality of work, effort, class participation, and sense of academic determination and commitment that would be described as impressive. Mackin has done a remarkable job competing with his peers at our extraordinarily competitive high school, all while mastering the fine balance between his academics and his extracurricular activities. His incredible achievement in many of our most rigorous courses makes him an exceptional student. Teachers are delighted with Mackin's originality and with his insight. Additionally, teachers consistently share that Mackin is without question a pleasure to have in their class. Mackin is a remarkable young man who never seems to or refuses to give up. His sense of academic determination, innate intelligence, and willingness to help others are just a few of the wonderful qualities that make Mackin the focused and driven young adult who has earned his high degree of success. He is an outstanding student in person, clearly deserving of this special recognition. Congratulations.
Put her in the middle, here we go. We're trying to help you.
Sharon, stand up.
Mom and Dad?
Congratulations. Sure. I know. Congratulations. Congratulations.
Mr. Street, you're going to turn the loop.
We're going to transition to a riveting Board of Education meeting right now, so you're welcome to stay, but by all means.
We take no offense.
You can watch it on TV, Gail fix the camera. Yes. Take care. I'm talking more than recognition. A couple of impromptu recognitions that I kind of felt the need to reach out to a couple of folks this week based on some events in our schools. Larry Brindrett has been a very, very good friend of the school system after he left his role as Board of Education member, which was how long ago now?
Too long.
Too long, all right, good
Want to come
enough.
back?
I remember the 2 a.m. meeting. That's why I'm not coming back.
They had one of those last week.
Yeah, we did.
I'll tell you about it later.
Larry represents the VFW, and I've been in 6 different school districts. I've never seen events the way we recognize veterans. We're one of the few districts that stays open on Veterans Day.
You want me to come up here?
I'd like you to sit right in the hot seat.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of things to go over.
Okay. So we're one of the few districts that stays open on Veterans Day. And really a big reason is the work of Larry and his colleagues that come to our schools and do a wonderful job in partnership with our principals to deliver some pretty powerful programs. I happened to visit Polson, and it's very moving. It really is. It's very moving to see the veterans on stage. Some of the poetry that the kids wrote were just unbelievable. Really insightful from the heart. And it was more than just let's play a song and do a pledge. It really was meaningful. It was authentic. We get nudged by Larry to make sure we get enough essays in the VFW essay contest and Teacher of the Year.
We'll talk about that.
And we essay. But I wanted to give Larry the floor for a few moments as a former board member and as a very, very close friend of the school system. It's all yours, Mr. Brindrett.
Okay, and all the board members, I sympathize with your plight. I'm going to give you a couple of sheets that I happen to have left over. This is a schedule of everything we did. And this is one of the programs that the high school put on. And I've got to get into my official gear.
Yay.
Now, if you were here last June, you saw that the hat was a different color, and there's a reason why the hat changed. Reason why the hat changed to white is because I'm a nice guy, but our post in Madison is one of 6 only in the state that is designated as an all-state post, meaning we do 3 times what every other post does. So both me and my quartermaster get to wear the white hat. Am I the only one that has the white hat? No, but the ones that do, Branford, New Haven, us, are the top posts in the state. None of those posts, including Branford, New Haven, come close to what our post does. So if you look at that schedule, it starts on Thursday, and it goes through yesterday afternoon at about 4 o'clock. It covers 4 schools. We kind of broke it up pretty good this time, and Tom and I are going to have to talk about that again. The elementary schools were both done on Friday, and the upper schools, the middle and high school, were done on Monday.
We had some of, if I may, Larry, we had some of our senior veterans who had a hard time, really endurance-wise. It was quite, trying to get it done in one day was really an impossibility. So we broke it up into multiple
And
days.
the only reason I'm here is all my counterparts are recuperating in an R&R right now, including our first and one of the most dynamic first woman commanders in Madison is the Donna Farrell, and she works very closely with me. She did that schedule, and she is the commander of the American Legion. And she was thrilled on Friday evening. I got to tell you one story. This is the second year that TJ's head football coach invited us to come down to the game, participate in the coin toss. So if you ever seen the game, you know about the coin toss. Donna was designated to flip the coin. And as TJ can tell you, it wasn't the best of conditions Friday night. So as we're standing there talking with the players, getting ready to start the game, the head football coach, and you know who he is, looked Donna directly in the eye and said, quote, "Don't lose the toss." So she intrepidly, I wish Katie was there because she would have gone out with her, went out to the center of the field, and a rather hardened head referee said, "Who's tossing the coin?" And she said, "I am." Well, he never gave her the coin, and he tossed it, and that was it. But Han won.
Yay!
That was quite interesting. There was a young lady named Mortensen,
Yeah, Madison.
Madison Mortensen. And I didn't know who this person was, because I kept getting emails from her, you know. It's gonna be changed, it may be Saturday, it may be in the afternoon, it could be in the evening, whatever. I got to the game and this, what is she, about 5 feet tall?
About that.
Yeah. Little young lady sitting there. I'm Madison. She did it as a service project. So that was great. So we had 4 schools and all 3 nursing homes. There are 3 in town. There's Watrous, you heard about. There's Madison House, and there's the Hearth at Tuxas. The class in the high school called Combat Literature, please change the name, has been changed to, yeah, that's none of my guys like combat literature. It really isn't about combat. And I've spoken to the class, so I know. I lost my train of thought. The teacher of this class is setting a little different agenda this year. All the students in the class have to do service projects. They all have to locate and interview a veteran, and they also have to do some community service. One of the things they started doing Friday afternoon, they went to the last event on that schedule, which is at the Hearth. And they sat through the Hearth's program, which is kind of like the schools and almost the same thing. And there were about 30 different people in the room, half of which were elderly veterans. Those students sat there, they went through the program, and they interviewed all the veterans. So they all got their interviews done. There'd be other opportunities. We're going to the VA hospital, they're gonna tag along. So we'll see how that goes this year. And maybe that course will be renamed and rejuvenated into something else. So that's what we've been doing with that. So we're gonna stay in touch with the schools, and as we go on, we'll come up with other projects and issues. Our all is available. Tom mentioned the essays. We got all 3 programs going this year. I can't divulge any results, although I may know some. We had at least 2 entries in the Voice of Democracy, very, very good entries. So close, like the election. Both of them will go to the next level, and we'll see how that goes. So I told TJ that's going up the line. The middle school was very active. Chris, thank you. I can't pronounce his last name. Generated 7 more essays, and at least one of those is going to a higher level. And 2 of your very, very good principals, Catherine Hart and good old Frank, each submitted another Teacher of the Year. So we have 2. Last year you had 1, now you have 2. We're allowed 3, so come up with a 3rd, and I try to sneak it in. I'm so good at that, they now made me the district chairman, so keep them coming. Set the right example. So we're real tired, but we're real busy, and we hope to keep that going.
I really appreciate the accessibility for the combat literature course too, name aside. It's incredible for the students to be able to have actual contact time and interviews and talking during the course actually with a veteran to come to visit. You came, and then you had a couple of colleagues go as well, correct?
They'll be going, Don is going this week, and the good colonel who did his uniform study, he was so good at that, they're gonna have him later on.
Yeah.
What she does is as she progresses through the different conflicts, like, I don't know if she does World War I, although I reminded everybody that's 100 years ago. And everybody forgets about that, 100 years ago. She did World War II, Korea, and the day you saw me, they were doing Vietnam.
Yes, yeah.
And then later on, they're gonna do Gulf War in Iraq, and the colonel will come for that. I do have a first sergeant we just got from Afghanistan, so he'll be coming for that. He'll tell you all the wonders of plywood in the war zone. I was fascinated when I heard it.
High interest course, and the relevance is great, so thank you for everything. We wanted to make sure you came and just recognize you publicly. You'll be back Memorial Day with another round.
With another round.
Yeah, we will, so.
And when we realign the schools, we'll have to realign the program.
We certainly will do that.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Did I hit everybody? Good.
You can come. One more impromptu recognition. I had the opportunity, I really want to take a moment to call out the Island Avenue PTO and an event that we had there that we've had over the years, but it's I think, grown in scope, and it was just, the building was just pumping on Friday. It was awesome, junior achievement. We had a ton of parents in the room. This is the true Teacher Appreciation Day, because parents come in and teach, and they're exhausted, and they leave and say, how do you do this 5 days a week, 6-7 hours a day? So that I love about it, but it was such a great experience. I asked Lauren Prescar, which I thought you'd be out of here by now, Lauren, I'm sorry.
No worries.
But Lauren Prescar from the Island Avenue PTO, I asked her just to come and just share a couple of comments on organizing, the participation, and so forth. But this was a great way of bringing real-world examples into a school for kids and making it real relevant. So Lauren.
This is my first time in a meeting. For those of you that don't know, Junior Achievement is run all over the United States. They are not always in smaller communities like ours because we do need 100% parent volunteers for it. And in a lot of cities, they draw from businesses, and they're usually run in these programs that are consistently once a month. People go in, they do their hour of community service, and the kids get this exposure to financial and entrepreneurial concepts. And it's absolutely amazing. We do it in one day. I sometimes have to beg, but most of the time once we get the parents in for the first time, they do it year after year. I was first exposed to it in Madison when my oldest, who's in 7th grade, was in kindergarten. And that was the last year that they had ever done it at Jeffrey. So some of you might not have ever even been exposed to it. I know that Jeffrey did it in one class last year, but Island Ave has kept going. As soon as I got over there, that was the first thing that I wanted to become involved in from the PTO. It's exciting to go in the classroom, to spend the day with the kids, and definitely the first few years, I would go home and need a glass of wine. The second after, the 100% appreciation for parents and anyone else in the schools. But the parents generally want to come back year after year, and we have had 100% parent participation, 2 to 3, sometimes 4 volunteers in a classroom. And we literally go in 8:30 to, we finish up around 2 o'clock, and the teachers and staff are happy to have us there and agreeable to doing the program. The program is brought to us, everything is free. They have amazing curriculum. It aligns with the core curriculum that we have, and hopefully we can continue it in Jeffrey next year. I'll be pushing for that, and we have a good volunteer base that we're moving over there, and hopefully it could be spread to other schools. In Madison, it used to go from K through high school, and everybody was exposed to that. So right now, we're in the last vestiges of elementary, so hopefully we can continue that, and at the very least get it in the elementary level, maybe up to Brown. It would be great. It's unbelievable in 3rd grade to sit there and have these students learn about running a pizza shop, and they are sitting there, and you're not sitting in your desk learning these concepts. You're moving around the classroom, and you're actually creating the pizza, and then you have other people that are coming to buy the pizza. You have to have the ad sales, and then the tax collector comes and he takes your money, and it's these concepts are just amazing to see the kids, and you're where's my money going? And I was in 1st grade last week, and we taught the kids what an entrepreneur was, and everybody knows what a job is, but they didn't realize what an entrepreneur is. And just to hear the concepts and them to go home and actually understand the concepts is really exciting. So hopefully we can keep going, and my little part, so.
Fully, thank you for coming tonight. I fully support the program. I was there. I spent 45 minutes in a 4th grade classroom. I made a hot dog stand with 3 other young ladies who were in my group, and just the materials they give you are very appropriate for the age. The language is perfect for 9-year-olds, the group I was working with. And, when it comes to what we want to teach in schools, our cup runneth over. Like, we could be here 10 hours a day and still not get. I look at our literacy coaches and a third grade teacher back here who would say that if we could have more time, we would take it, right? But these are concepts that are life skills, and these are important, financial literacy, entrepreneurship, great concepts for kids to learn, and fun. They were having a blast, and the parents they were exhausted,
Yeah.
but they had
They
a
do
great time.
have a ton
And they
of
just
fun.
took over.
Yeah.
The parents that's it, we'll take over, they take over the class, the teachers kind of sit back and just, are there to help if needed. It's the spirit, enthusiasm of the parents involved was just unbelievable, it's just remarkable, so it's a lot of
Did you have to
work.
receive training?
Well,
to
so we
facilitate?
actually you get a packet, and this packet is so comprehensive that you would not need any training. They do a parent training. You spend a half an hour with a junior achievement representative, and they come out and they kind of just say, you kind of go through the whole, all right, there's 5 sessions, usually just split it up, but I mean, you sit there, you read it over, it's daunting, but it's not once you're into it, and it's super fun for the kids, and
Thank you so much
Great
for taking
program,
it
so.
on and telling us about it, and I think on behalf of the board, we're grateful that you came to share it with us, and I'm sure that your enthusiasm for it will spread.
Will we give the Jeffrey?
Yeah, at least
that's my finger. I
Jeffrey.
mean, they've got exposed, so it's just a matter of the volunteers, and I mean, really, that's the biggest hurdle. And the great thing about the volunteers, you get a different base of volunteers. There is a lot of working parents that come in because they feel comfortable with these concepts, and they're business people, and they're like, oh, I want to teach this to the kids. I want to impart this, and part of the day is explaining to the kids what you do in life, and so it's really a nice program.
Lauren, it's a heavy lift organizing it, it's a lot of work to organize this. Lauren is, I think, understating how much work she puts into that part. When do you legitimately start doing that planning for it?
So Junior Achievement can literally run any time of the year. We do it in November just because when I first started there, that's kind of when we did it. So it starts the first day of school, and I'm on the phone trying to coordinate dates, and
You need a couple good months so to get it all.
yeah, I mean, it can be pulled together, and the biggest hurdle is having the classroom list to email parents
Yeah,
to get the information out. We had a table set up at our back to school night, and we got some volunteers, but as I said, at least 50 to 60% of volunteers are returning volunteers year to year, and they're in multiple classrooms. One kid, they just follow them all the way down, so it could be done any time of the year. As I actually was just in touch with the Junior Achievement rep, and I said, we might not get it done for November, but once school starts and we get in and could talk to Catherine and some point during the year,
Some
yeah.
point, yes.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for all you
Thank
do.
Okay. Our student report
We
is
do not have students,
not
we
gonna
have
happen.
very busy students
We have a
today.
score on field hockey, Mr. Sanitary?
Lost 1-0.
Oh, no. Okay.
Go see the show this weekend, Thursday, right? Friday, Saturday.
Thursday maybe,
Thursday.
weather's questionable.
Okay.
Friday and Saturday for sure.
Okay. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes. Little kids will like it as well.
Yeah. Superintendent's report.
So we have a presentation, but rather than have Mr. Sanitary sit through a couple of presentations, I'd like to hit on one of my other matters topics that I had sent in my memo to the board for tonight's meeting. TJ, if you want to join us at the front here.
Sure.
I don't think that it's a surprise that, high schools around the country are challenged with, and have been for decades, with how to enforce certain rules and procedures, and how do you keep illegal drugs out of your school. That's been a perennial high school challenge, and if we can get tools into the hands of our administration that can help in that, we look into it and we pursue it. A lot of products come our way. We don't always entertain them because they're not as valuable, not as trustworthy, not as credible. We did come across one recently that we have discussed with the Madison Police Department, and we believe it will help us and help the administration in enforcing, particularly around the problem of vaping and when vaping is done with marijuana. So there is a parent workshop coming up on November 28th, I believe, that's being offered at Polson by Youth and Family, and in conjunction with PTOs possibly. But I think it's called Smokescreen, and it's really about the problems and kind of the way it's hard to detect. One of the problems we want to narrow the focus to right here, and I have TJ to stay for this, is the problem of vaping is an issue. The problem of vaping with illegal substances like marijuana makes it even more complex because of the lack of the ability to detect it by odor. So I'm going to let Mr. Terry talk a little bit about a tool that he believes will help, and we wanted to inform the board because if we decide to go forward with this, which right now it looks like the board has blessed it, that we'd like to let the parents and student body know, and we wanted to start with a public introduction first. So.
Great, thank you, Mr. Reese. So if you pay attention to the FDA in this topic, they're stating vaping, e-cigarettes epidemic at this point, especially with teenagers. And one of our challenges when we catch students who are using these items, you can't tell what's in them. We have to make an assumption that it's nicotine based, and kids aren't going to necessarily tell us if it's something else. Catherine Barden from MAID actually made us aware of a testing product that finally has been designed to test liquid forms of substances. That hasn't been possible in the past. And we bought a kit, actually really inexpensive. You $10 for 4 test kits. And it comes Q-tip swab. It's soaked in a special type of solution. And you rub it on the gel or liquid, depending on if it's a vape, a dab, or anything else with names you've heard of. And it will accurately tell if the item is marijuana or if it's not marijuana. And right now, the 2 biggest substances that are used in these items are either nicotine, which you can buy online, or the dab pens, which if you know what those are, you can search them. That is typically marijuana based. Like students or people will buy marijuana, and you can Google, how do you make the dab pen gel, and it shows you how to make it in really a safe process. And it looks like a waxy substance, but we were unable to tell. This product gives us the ability to tell what the substance is. And that's pretty significant. We had the police take it and test it on real drugs, and we don't have any real drugs on purpose in my office. There might be some from all the things that have been confiscated, and it works really well. It was 100% accurate, which is really nice. Our intent is not to increase penalties and consequences for students. What we plan to do through our advisory groups with PAW is talk to students about this new process that we're going to be going through as a deterrent. Because if you get caught with a Juul that's filled with nicotine-based product, you get a Saturday detention. If you get caught with a dab pen that has marijuana in it, you get a 10-day suspension from school and arrested. So I think a pretty significant deterrent. And we also can manage some of the distribution piece as well. If you look in our code of conduct, distribution, most people think it's sale of, like you see on TV, giving this to someone else. If you're giving an illegal drug, that's distribution. And then we come here at the level of expulsion, and you get to make a decision for the illegal drugs that are in schools. We plan to make this really loud and really informative before we start using it. So all parents, the entire community, and the whole student body will know. A majority of our students, I think, will say thank you because we're tired of this. The students who are making bad decisions, hopefully this will deter them because, again, 2 or 4 hour Saturday detention, not that much of a deterrent. Something as significant, illegal drugs in school, there shouldn't be any tolerance, 10-day suspension and an arrest. You have to remember, an arrest in high school, unless the student's behavior is really out of control, it's not handcuffs in the back of a car. It's a summons to appear in court, but it's still an arrest. We do think this would be quite effective. We talked to parents at our last PTO meeting. We didn't talk about this yet, but Catherine Barden did a hidden in plain sight, backpack, and it's like frightening to see how many different items anyone can purchase to hide drugs, even hide the odors from a drug-sniffing dog. It's alarming. We want to use this as a next step to help kids understand you can't and shouldn't be using this because it's harmful. And we do think this will be a major deterrent, because we've caught a lot of kids with vapes or dabs, and we've only been able to assume that it's nicotine-based, and that's certainly not the case.
So tonight was really an informational for the board, because we anticipate that we'll go public with the student body and the parents to let them know as well that we'll be using this. Everything by what we've checked, this is a high-quality tool, and as I said, the Madison Police Department definitely supports our efforts in doing this as well. I think it goes without saying that the job has gotten more and more complex to be a building administrator. No matter what we put together to prevent, we just feel like we're shoveling against this tide of pop culture that keeps winning, and we're losing, and it's just no matter what we come up with, there's something else that comes out there that makes the job that more complex, and the kids get younger and younger and younger. So this is, hopefully an effort to stem the tide there, and I think act as a deterrent, really, is if we can, at least do that and educate our kids.
And part of the communication, because some students talk regularly about the concern, kids who have, addiction problems, communicating what those options are. Because kids could come to us, and reach out, say, I have a drug problem, and we do everything we can to point them in the right direction for support without consequences. So we want to communicate that as well, because there are certainly kids using these items at this point now who have an addiction to. The experimentation that they participate at times leads to something a lot worse in cases. So we're hoping, again, we don't want more discipline. We are hoping this will be a deterrent, and we finally can tell what's in these products, and that's really important.
Any questions for Stephanie?
Do we have a consequence for if they're on an athletic team or something, if they're caught with nicotine?
If you read the code of conduct, which I wouldn't expect you to.
Sorry. I forgot that.
Usually you read it when it applies to like your own kid or
Yeah.
something. That's when you usually read it. So I certainly respect that you haven't. Ultimately, whatever the consequences, like if it's a Saturday detention, for an example, 4 hours, and there's a practice or a competition, the student athlete is not allowed to participate. If it's a suspension, students are not allowed to participate in any extracurricular activities, like the fall play, for example. If a student made a bad decision tomorrow in school, and had the lead in the fall play, and they were suspended on Thursday and Friday, I hope they have another lead, because they're not allowed to participate. Some of the coaches will communicate with their student athletes, expectations that are a little more stern, where, you're not going to get kicked off the team, but you're compromising our ability to be competitive and the expectations to be a team member. And some of those players will be in, street clothes on, upcoming competition. Don't make an assumption when you see, at the next football game, for example, there's a lot of injuries that sideline kids. But some of the coaches say, if you want to be part of the team, this is the expectation. You'll still be part of the team, but playing is a privilege. And the substance abuse is not part of playing and not really acceptable. And the kids, the teammates usually report their own teammates because, very competitive. We look at education-based athletics, they like the winning piece of education-based athletics, and, one bad decision could have a major impact.
In terms of the testing process, when you find, or so that you said it was a Q-tip type of device, does the police test or do you test in the building?
We test, and then we call the police if it tests positive.
Okay, so that would be you specific or nurse or?
Any of the three administrators.
Okay.
And you have to assume that there's reasonable suspicion before we do any, all the steps to get to that point would have to be done appropriately, and then we would test the substance. If it indicated marijuana, we call our school resource officer, and he would take it from there.
Part of the, and forgive me, I didn't mention this, part of our inquiry into this was to talk to Attorney Mooney about the search and seizure pieces of it.
Right.
And obviously those don't go away. You need to have school search and seizure laws are very clear, and they give a lot of latitude to the building administration, and specifically the building administration.
Right, I just wasn't sure if the police were called in first, they test it, or you test it first, and then if it's positive, you call them in.
That's a great question, and the school resource officer, it's excellent. excellent resource. We call them all the time for input, but we try not to put a student in a situation that's negative with a police officer unless we know it should be. So if we call them first and it's nicotine, then part of the goal of having relationships with the police officer, that's part of the SRO plan, that hurts that piece. Once, it indicates marijuana, everyone knows, this is gonna have a really bad ending. And that's something that we call the resource officer in, and they talk with parents as well. We do the school discipline, they talk about what the summons means, and the parents in court and consequences, and holds the student more accountable, and that's really important.
And that was my concern, so thank you for explaining.
Anyone else?
Questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm just gonna call Greg back, he got disconnected
Yes.
somehow.
While you're doing that, a couple quick ones. Our CTE program at Daniel Hand was named the Connecticut Computer Technology Education Program of the Year. So we won for the entire state. I have a formal letter I'll forward to the board. Very exciting indeed. And our robotics team this weekend competed in the first of a number of competitions they have coming up. They ranked as high as 6th out of 40 teams with one of their robots. They went 5 and 2. Now, is this like in an octagon, they're battling, or?
It's a set competition every year. And if you come to our new CAD classroom,
Yeah.
it's actually set up, and that's where they practice, just like, the field hockey team has
Yeah,
practice,
yeah.
and the football team. And the robots have to do specific things each year.
Tasks.
And there's one round that's programmed, they pre-program, hit a button, and they're competing against another school. And then the next round is manual controls, almost video game-like. And we have actually we're hosting a competition in December this year. It's early. We tried to go a little bit earlier because last year it was snowed out, unfortunately. I'm not sure what
I
you
remember
recall.
that, yeah.
And it's fun if you have younger kids, to
Yes,
bring your
it's
kids.
December 15th, all day at Hand.
At Hand, that's
You
the one we
have some
host.
time to pop in. It is incredible to see the competition and the collaboration between all of the schools that come. It's fun to watch, it's like it's a sporting event. It's really cool.
I think we had 4 teams compete this weekend, and we had one make it to the semifinals of 40 teams. And one of our teams won the sportsmanship award of the whole tournament. So, pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. Great program. Brian Dementa, CTE department runs it under Dan Grenier, the program coordinator. Great stuff.
Great.
Something
Thank
for
you.
everybody at hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you want to get Greg while Gail, are you booting up here?
Ready?
We're going to move?
Sure.
Okay.
Nice try, Greg.
They do this and then.
You can sit in the student section. Katie, you can sit in the student section.
Huh? I will sit, I'm just gonna grab a glass of water.
Great.
You don't want them to just call the police up front.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, there is a policy for that type of
If
stuff.
you're found with the testing piece, you need to take a look. Good. Sure they
That time.
Switch chairs.
I put it there early. No, I don't put it back early. You do. I do. Me too. Me too. Second time in a night. Let's just count the
Camera.
technology.
This.
Yeah, well. Surprise,
All right.
surprise.
Okay, so every year, we present a standardized testing and college admissions report to the board, and that covers the state test, it covers college admissions, it covers the high school tests. I think there's a couple of headlines here, and I think the biggest one is, around the question of how are our kids doing? Our kids are doing awesome. Our kids are really doing awesome. When you look at the performance indicators across the board, they are doing incredibly well. When you take a look, we're going to dive immediately into the high school level, and what you're going to see is, for a parent, sending your kid to Madison and really interested in kind of on the end of that 13-year journey, what happens, what you're going to see is largely, the strategic plan, the balanced scorecard talks about the parent stakeholders saying, providing choice for my kid for the future, and kids are getting into colleges of choice at large rates, at high rates, and kids are performing at high levels, taking a lot of college level courses and doing incredibly well in those college level courses. However, after diving in deeply into the actual instrument, the state test itself, there are a couple things that jump out, and Gail did about a month-long research project into the actual tool itself. One thing that we have found that Gail will get into that is rather stark is there is zero correlation between the state test and how kids perform on college admissions tests. There's zero correlation. It is labeled, advertised, a lot of money is made on saying it is a college and career-ready test, the SBAC. And when you look at the data and you look at the research, there is zero correlation, which is rather stark when you consider how much is invested in that. However, on the backside of that, in high school, you'll see our kids perform best on the measures that matter on that end, and particularly where they're going to end up, where they choose to end up. Another piece that jumped out, Gail did some research on this one. Connecticut, there were originally 30-plus states that jumped into the SBAC test. What Gail realized is that as so many states shed the test, we're down to 12 or 13 now out of the 30-plus originally, Connecticut monkeyed with the test. And they actually changed the test. They're the only state to change the test. And what that did was it compromised the validity and reliability of the test. So for districts that are tethering their success on these scores, they're doing so with a test right now that has compromised validity and reliability. That's like going to a doctor, getting a medical test, and not having any validity and reliability, and then following a prescription course based on that. So in our words, I think if we went really, really far, we'd say malpractice. But for tonight's purposes, we'll just say compromises validity and reliability. The last two pieces that stuck out is really based on that kind of false sense of validity. There are false claims of student performance, and it's really a misuse of the test. So we'll go through that a little bit deeper. And I think the fourth piece, and I'll end with this and hand it off to Gail, is the happy note, is that because of our district vision and because of what we've done for 6 or 7 years in building curriculum, we have set our target so far beyond this measure that the measure's performance has actually warped a sense of student performance. On all the measures, and we have a little teacher testimony later from Michelle Reinflesch, an amazing third grade teacher here. And we have Michelle Horn, one of our literacy coaches, who's very well versed in kind of how we assess reading and writing across the system. We have some incredibly rigorous, meaningful performance targets that shoot so far beyond and get to more important performances of our kids. So I'm going to hand it off to Gail at this point and interject periodically, but it's all yours.
And thank you, Michelle and Michelle, for being here and for the work that you've done. I wanted to start out tonight with just this link to an article from Harvard Business Review that really makes the point that humans tend to change their behavior based on the metrics that they're held against. So it's really important that we take a critical look at what measures we're using to hold people against. Daniel Hand, class of 2018, 288 graduates. And in their exit survey, they reported out their educational plans. And you'll see that the vast majority of our graduates are going to four-year private and public schools, both in-state and out-of-state, which is a very strong presence going on to four-year colleges. When we take a look at the ratings based on Barron's rating system, you can see that the number of applications and the number of acceptances is incredibly high. If you look at the highly competitive plus category, combined with the most competitive colleges, you're seeing 64.2% of our kids are accepted into that level of college and university, which is extremely high.
And if I may here, one thing that jumps out at me is, you think of the names, the most competitive colleges. So that's 1 in 4 of our applications from our high school being accepted there. I took these numbers and just grabbed one or two Fairfield County districts, one of my former districts, just to kind of see, where we stand. Our numbers are exactly right there with them. We actually, Weston High School from this graduating class, which is a very high achieving high school, our highly competitive college number is actually higher, and our most competitive is slightly lower by a few points. But you're talking about the cream of the crop as far as college acceptance. Our kids at Daniel Hand, I go back to our strategic plan. We said, what would the parents say, the stakeholder outcome, what would they say? That after 13 years, ubiquitous choice for our kids when they leave, and I think this is a good indicator of that.
So if you look at that bottom line, it says the factors used when determining the categories for each college, it's partially SAT and AC exams, ranking class, and GPA. So taking a look at our SAT results, when looking at our AP scores, which says the amount of students that have been qualified for college level credit, 80% of our students, 79%, scored a passing score or better on those exams, earning college level credit. It's important to note that out of those students, we don't require every student who takes an AP course to take the exam. So students can opt to take the exam and try for credit or not. But those students who take our exams, 80% of them are successful, which is a very high number. When we look at our SAT results, both in English language arts and mathematics, we are in the top 10 districts in the state of Connecticut for our scores on the SAT. So despite DIRG, which is our reference group across the state, this is DIRG A and DIRG B communities, which are the top two DIRGs in the state. Madison is right up there in the top 10 in ELA, as well as in mathematics. So you can look at the names down at the bottom to see who is in that top 10 with us.
Out of 1,600, you know how it's 800.
They went back to
They went back.
It went back to our scores.
Yeah.
Yeah, before you go on. Another piece too we did not include in this is that we offer UConn courses at our high school. We offer early college experience courses. And if you pass those courses, you get UConn credit for them. We had 488 UConn courses taken last year alone at the high school, 488 in just 1 year. 463, 95% got college credit in our high school. So that to me is remarkable performance when you look at the type of coursework kids are taking, the success rate they have.
Can I ask about that? In the past, there have been people who have touted and other people who have detracted and or not been as concerned about like our high school's rankings in U.S. News and World Report and things like that. My understanding is that we may be at a slight disadvantage in those rankings, not that it matters, but because we know we're preparing our kids well, but for the people who are keeping score by those methods, that those methods usually test, or they consider AP courses, but they don't consider ECE, which is the early college.
They don't, and they also don't consider performance, they consider how many kids take it. Yeah. So some high schools, and particularly, you may look at U.S. News and World Report, the 1,000 whatever schools, and you may have the Connecticut extracted. You look at the top 10, and how did Capital Prep Charter get rated #1 on the Newsweek, top high schools? Because sometimes what they do is, as a condition of earning AP credit, you must sit for the exam, which inadvertently has Gail's first message was about, what you measure you're going to get. You get that score to go up in U.S. News and World because you're mandating the course to be taken.
Yeah.
We're also a bit compromised on some of those other, you got to look at how those scores are calculated on great schools, niche and all that. We're compromised because we have a very homogeneous population ethnically. Yeah. So, you get points for that in some of those scores as well. Not the U.S. News, some of the other ones.
Yeah.
So in front of you, you have, I think, a 26-page deep dive into the SBAC report and into standardized testing. And after that month plus of deep dive and passionate study, these are the claims that I am making based on those findings. And I will provide you with an overview of some of that evidence tonight. As Tom stated, there's no relationship between SBAC and SAT or how the students are tested in these two measures. In other words, practice on the SBAC as a standardized measure does not mean that you are going to have a better experience taking the SAT. And I'll show you how that looks. The Connecticut SBAC varies from the SBAC blueprints, the original design of the SBAC, the ones that the other states are participating in. And also, misuse of standardized assessments, and I can't emphasize enough, can lead to false impressions of student achievement and also impact curriculum and instruction. And the way that we've designed our curriculum and our assessment holds student achievement to a higher standard than that tested in the SBAC. So I'm going to draw your attention. These are our SBAC scores. So in contrast to the SAT scores that you just saw, being the top 10 in the state despite the DIRG, Madison has areas where we are close to the DIRG average score, but then some that also drift towards the state. In particular, as kids get older, you'll see that our scores that are the blue columns might be coming closer to the red, and we'll take a close look at that. And the same is true in mathematics. Blue bar is Madison. We still have, significantly higher scores than the state, but still understanding those scores and what they mean is really important before you place a value on these. So there's no relationship between the SBAC and the SAT or how the students are tested. This is the group of students in the blue bar to the left that took the SBAC. The same cohort of students that we just showed you their results are shown on the SAT scores on the right. You can see very different scores between achievement levels on the SBAC from the same group of kids as tested on the SAT. Where we are in the top 10 in the state on the SAT results, we're actually near the bottom of the DIRG in the SBAC results. When you take a look at the Smarter Balanced Assessment on the left, and you take a look at the SAT on the right, and you look at the kinds of questions that students are being asked, there's a huge variety of item types on the Smarter Balanced Assessment compared to a very few items on the SAT. You can see a huge difference in the number of items based on that are judging a math score or creating a math score, as well as an ELA score. Vastly different. You could see 18 different tools available to you. And if you think of a tool, think of a calculator, because that's the only one available on the SAT. They get a calculator for parts. On the SBAC, there's the ability to strike through on the computer, take notes, use math tools, Zoom. But a huge piece of this is the assumption that if I practice doing a standardized assessment, I'll get better at the SAT. But actually the test taking strategies alone are different. Where in test taking on the Smarter Balanced, I'm not allowed to skip. There's a pop-up that makes me guess. I can mark it for review and go back, but on the SAT, there's no penalty for skipping a question. So if you think about the level of sophistication that's needed to just answer the questions on the SAT, and the level of complication that we're placing our youngest kids in front of when they're taking the Smarter Balanced. This is 3rd grade through 8th grade. They have to learn all of these things before they can even show what they know on the assessment. And in the report that I sent you, there is a link up here to sample questions, so you can see for yourself how those tools work. Tom had mentioned declining participation. The blue bars are the SBAC, and you can see that from the beginning, when we first started hearing about the SBAC, or the Smarter Balanced Assessment, a lot of states have shed their membership from the consortium. That has happened for a variety of reasons. Some associated with support of the Common Core, some as a backlash to standardized testing and the amount of time. And in fact, when you look at blue states, we are one of 2 lonely states on the East Coast still participating in the SBAC. So you see Connecticut and Vermont with the predominant participating states on the West Coast. So it's really important to understand that the SBAC assessment design is actually a system. it's not meant to be one test. It's not meant to be a summative assessment alone. The summative assessment is one component of 3. The summative assessment is designed to give limited and general feedback. Very limited and very general feedback. The interim assessment blocks are practice tests. They're smaller chunks of the summative assessment that you can give in order to give kids familiarity with the kinds of questions that they're being asked or get information on a very tiny slice of the Common Core. And this playlist and digital libraries are part of that assessment system too, and they're really a collection of lessons that you can refer to if you don't have a curriculum aligned to the Common Core.
You know, a little anecdotal research on our part, Gail and I have kind of inferred that probably 80 to 90% of school districts are doing practice tests on a regular basis. We don't have that as part of our program here, but you can only imagine, you know, that if you practice something, you may not learn more, but you definitely will get better scores.
So our second claim, the Connecticut SBAC varies from the SBAC blueprints. For every standardized assessment, there's a blueprint behind it. It talks about the kinds of items that students will be presented with, the number of items, and how those items will be constructed and inform the overall score. But the Connecticut SBAC has questionable reliability and validity because they vary from those blueprints. So here's the one of the 2 scores that you get as a parent on your SBAC report. So parents who receive their student reports this week have an ELA scaled score. And that's the number that they have, and that also translates to an achievement level. The score in the blueprints is made up of 4 general areas: reading, writing, speaking, listening, and research. Those 4 categories are informed by 14 items, questions, test questions. And in writing, there's 6 test question items, but 3 of and an additional 3 that are performance tasks. What a performance task is more like how we assess kids. Take what you know, apply it to this situation. Show us your thinking behind it, show us how you know this content and how you can apply it to something new. Speaking and listening just has that question bank on the computer. The research piece is designed to have 8 questions here and 1 performance task. Because of the amount of pushback about the time spent on standardized testing, Connecticut took out the items that are most like our instruction, the performance tasks, and they removed those items from the question banks. Therefore, when they did that, they also collapsed the categories into 3 instead of 4. This is unique to Connecticut only. No other state is doing this. We called and checked. So now the overall score is only informed by questions. And the questions and the number of questions are right here. So the biggest category is reading, smaller category, speaking, listening, and then you've got this Connecticut only category of 14 items that is now reading, writing, and research. So if you take a look at that biggest category, reading, and if I want to find out more about that reading category, I find out that reading, that one claim, is informed by 14 targets of 2 different kinds of reading and 26 different standards. 14 items. Tell me about all of that information. 14 items that each kid has a chance to give. If I was just looking at the design of the test, and this is a blueprint right here, out of those 14 items, I'm guaranteed that each kid gets at least 5. But some kids will get up to 10. Some kids will get 1 item that tells them about central ideas, 1 about reasoning and evidence, and 3 items out of any of these things. We don't know which 3.
So do they do like extrapolation modeling based on the answers they provide and whether they get them right or wrong in related areas?
Yeah, so that computer adapted part that was touted so widely about the SBAC, in fact, because it was meeting the federal mandates, the bulk of those items are on grade level. So there's a very definite ceiling that kids can be tested in, a very definite basement. We'll see how that impacts our group and what that means. But the degree of variability, so if I'm trying to extrapolate any meaning out of this instructionally, there's no meaning. There's no conclusions that I can make because it doesn't tell me anything precise or exact enough to inform instruction. And there's also a huge amount of variability. So if we pulled up grade 5, and this is our actual grade 5 information, I pulled it all together, huge spreadsheets, really did some data crunching, and I'm going to give you a summary. We checked it at least 7 times. So this is really important for anyone looking at this particular test, is to understand that there's a standard error of measurement that shows how much a student's score would vary if they took the test again. Violet's shaking her head because she knows this one. So we took a look, and that's a plus or minus. So every student gets this overall score. Every parent gets this number. In TD Tiny Writing, they'll say if your child took this test again, their score would be anywhere between this number and this number. So for our 5th grade students, we said, okay, what's the average, what's the mean? Here's the mean score for English. What's the mean standard error? So this is plus or minus 29. So if you take 2548 and you look over here at achievement levels, 2548 is like right around in the middle. But if I add this 29, my overall mean is either up near the top of this level or up near the bottom of this level. And if I take a look at on the student level in these claims, I'm seeing some kids have a standard error measurement of 169. That throws them into vastly different achievement levels. That information is not available to parents, so none of the parent community gets their child's actual scaled score for reading, listening, or writing or research because of the huge amount of variation. The state of Connecticut only gives you an approximation. So happy you asked about like the ceiling and the adaptability, and I think Seth, you did as well. If you look at the mode, and the mode is the score most frequently seen on that spreadsheet, it's exactly the same for reading, listening, and writing and research. They're like, how can the mode be the same? Call the state, the mode's the same because the kids topped out on the test. And the same thing happened in mathematics. Now if you take the listening, just take this middle claim in ELA and in math, and you take that mean standard error measurement, and you take that number, you're either in level 4, level 3, or level 2. And the same is true for mathematics. Our group, our 5th graders, their mean is either in level 4, level 3, or level 2. To make it even more vague, can you get more vague? Each claim has a confidence interval, and they took that standard error measurement and they multiply it times 1.5. So you're pretty sure that your distribution will be a true value once you add and multiply that 1.5. We'll see how that plays out. So this is my grade level information. If I take any action on this, if I change curriculum based on any of this, I am taking a stab in the dark. I'm doing an injustice to every kid who's in every level. So take a look at our ELA scores, and this is our ELA scores over time. So we wanted to take a deeper dive. So thank you, Michelle, for being here, and Michelle for being here. So Michelle and Michelle took our 3rd grade scores. If you look at these 3rd grade scores, we're 83%, 69%, 63%. Oh my God, are our students becoming worse readers? Are they actually regressing? So let's take a look at a close-up shot now, looking at a classroom level. We just looked at a district level data. Let's look at a classroom level. This is the score report that parents get. So here's that general score, that ELA score that now you know is made up of 3 claims with a huge amount of variability. Here's how the parents get the scores on the claims. Here's reading, check, above average, equals approaching standard, or below standard. The student's score is here, the school average is here, the district average is here, and in itty bitty print down here, it says the range of the trueness of that score. So if parents aren't reading this piece, they won't know that there's range in here. The other really disturbing part of this is if you look at level 2, and we'll look at the language about this, the claim in the description in level 2 for parents says that students performing at this standard will likely need support to get on track for success in the next grade. Based on the trueness of those scores, they're telling parents will likely need support to get on track. So we took a look, and we looked at one third grade class. So now I'm going to introduce Michelle.
Hello. So when I sat with Gail over the summer and she said, I want you to look at your SBAC scores. I said, fine, okay. I knew that 94% of my class was reading on grade level at the end of the year. So, okay, let's look at it. And then I see my score. 54% of my class is past the English part. And I felt like I got kicked in the stomach because it didn't match at all what I saw in the room or my assessments that I gave all year. And I wanted to figure out what happened. I mean, is there anything that I could learn from this? I don't know. So we took a look, and it turned out that there were 8 students that didn't meet the level 3 passing score.
So level 3 is the green band, level 2 is the beige, and the pink on the bottom is level 1.
And the verticalness of it is the standard of the error.
Yeah.
So there's a big range right there. So if you look at that, at least 4 could have passed. What's interesting to note about those 8 students though, 4 were special ed, and the SBAC doesn't allow for the accommodations that I would give in my classroom throughout the year based on their IEP. 2 students out of these 8 were reading a year advanced of where they needed to be by the end of the year. They were reading at the end of a 4th grade level. 1 student was new to district and had significant trouble assimilating. And 1, student 3, was a regular ed student who had anxiety. She took 3 days to take the test, cried, and I couldn't do anything about it. So there's stories behind all these numbers. And if I didn't get this the year I had these kids, so first of all, I couldn't do anything about it anyway. But if the next year's teacher were given this, they would be getting misinformation because you can't go off of this. It's not showing what they were actually doing in the room, in the classroom.
So this piece is actually taking a look at the same kids and looking at just the reading claim. So here's their actual score on the reading claim. Then you'll see the red bar where the standard error is. And then remember that confidence interval where you multiply it by 1.5. And you can see that student 1 could be level 1, level 2, or level 3. The same is true with most of the students in this profile. So the students' parents receive these indicators at the bottom. So they're looking and saying approaching standard, and it doesn't matter where in that range you are. The rule for approaching standard is that if your tails go anywhere into any other box, you are approaching standard. If you're not cleanly up in the green, you are approaching standard. If the student is not touching anywhere in the green with any of the tails, then they are below standard. So that's the criteria for that. But this doesn't match what Michelle knows about her students' reading. Now look at the listening claim, the tails actually get bigger. Remember, this claim was made on 8 to 9 test items. So there's less confidence. And here's the Connecticut indicator of writing and research. And again, you could see the messages that parents got. So here's our next claim. And I really want you to think about false impressions of student achievement, being the parent who receives these reports and the amount of vagueness in these reports, that you could be left with false impressions. If you're being told your student will most likely need support to get on grade level, and you don't know all of the information behind this test, then you definitely would have a false impression of your students' achievement. And it could alter curriculum and instruction. We're going to take a look at how that happens. The SBAC actually, and the State Department has set growth targets for each student based on how they performed on the SBAC exam in the previous year. And that percentage of that target actually is used for part of the Connecticut School and District Accountability. So you can see the problems with that. You've got a huge amount of variability in the score, growth targets being set based on that, and then the percentage of that target actually playing into an accountability system. Michelle, you want to talk about this piece?
Yeah. So, in our district, we have what we consider universal screens and common assessments. What you're looking at here is a snapshot of 2017-18. Grade 3 English Language Arts timeline, and you'll see various, if we look over at the September 5th to the left, all the different assessments that students will be taking in reading and writing. And we record those assessments, look at those assessments to make instructional decisions. And we could just travel right through the year. There's different transfer tasks, performance-based assessments, reading assessments, fluency assessments. We have many, many indicators throughout the year that we're assessing students on. And this is a snapshot of just reading and writing.
So Michelle has all of these pieces of information about her students' ability to read, write, listen, and more than one snapshot given in one point in time. So this is all the information that she's making for judgments about who needs significant intervention or intervention to be successful to go on to the next grade level.
So the 4 students that we see on the left-hand side, you can see where they started in the fall. The teacher college reading levels on the left-hand side are the benchmark where the child needs to be by the end of the year. In 3rd grade, they need to be at a level P in the spring. So you can see those 4 that were part of that group all met benchmark. But that's a very different message that the parents are getting, that the next year's teacher is getting. And if they were to base lessons off of that, it wouldn't be doing any child any justice at all, because it wouldn't be accurate.
So we, last year we talked about this score in particular. Our 8th grade students, 50% of them were reported to meet goal on the SBAC. And the board asked at that time, why do you think that is? Why do you think only 50% did? Because we were seeing this, decline over time. And also we saw an impact of our participation rates. The point that I made at that time is, gee, based on all of our other measures, I would say the kids didn't try. They didn't put forth their effort. In fact, when Tom and I were on with the State Department checking some of our facts that we've uncovered, they said to us, based on the information that we have about your students last year, your 8th graders took the test in 40 minutes, in an average of 40 minutes, where the test average is over 3 hours. So in fact, there's students see no value in the SBAC, and parents are seeing no value in the SBAC. This is after 3 years of getting those reports, and probably a level of frustration, I'm guessing, in trying to figure out if there's any meaning.
And the experiencing the participation rate, go back, Michael, is kind of interesting because the federal law that replaced No Child Left Behind gives any parent the right to opt the child out of the test. Connecticut has done a really good job of trying to keep that quiet, but we reviewed this with our council, and very clearly it's right there in the federal law. What we noticed is that parents with children with special needs will advocate for their kid and say, this isn't going to tell you anything. I just had a triennial battery in my PPT process. Why would I want to have this now? The other end of the spectrum, we have a class of geometry kids in 8th grade who either weren't too invested or just chose not to take it. And the parents, work with them on that. So, the one thing I said to Gail that I just kind of sat back and thought about, the only districts that take this test are the ones that are mandated by law. So if it's such a great tool and great assessment, why are Hopkins and Choate or my friend John Fix at the country school saying, all of our kids should do this? So there's a mandated element to this that we obviously know about, but the participation rate here in particular locally, I think as you get to that middle school level, there's definitely an influence on the performance levels.
Do we still have is there still a financial penalty if it drops below a certain percent? Oh, they got rid of it.
There never was a financial
Well, unless the
penalty.
district got penalized or something, no?
Nope, the only thing that they can do is try to ding you on your accountability index score, that 0 to 100 score, yeah. Which is probably ever got challenged, it hasn't. It would fly in the face of the federal law that allows, parents to opt their kids out.
So how do districts improve SBAC scores if they
Bad things.
decide that is?
Bad things. This is a list of bad things.
This is a list of ways that they put this as a priority value, and it goes back. So I'm not going to read it to you, but I'll highlight some of the ways that we've seen this happen with past instruments. Michelle, you want to talk about this?
So I pulled this up. I can't remember if this was it was before Tom's time, during CMT time. This is just a progression of what I had to do as a grade 3 teacher. And for all of you who don't know me, I was a grade 3 teacher here for 11 years before I became a literacy coach. So one of the pieces on the CMT was the editing revising. So the way we prepared kids was we had lots of workbooks at the time. And we would follow this schedule and take kids through this, editing skills one by one. And we had days that we had to do it, weeks that we had to do it, the amount of time that we had to spend on it. So this is just one way that we probably scored pretty well because we practiced and practiced and practiced.
Does that mean we don't teach that in schools anymore?
Oh, no, we still
No,
do.
can I address
Quite the
that
contrary.
actually? We're doing, and it doesn't make sense, right? If you're teaching reading and writing, why aren't they doing better? Remember the slide that showed when Gail showed it had 18 tools? Those tools are only found on the SBAC. So I can't, unless I do the practice test, I can't teach my kids how to take the test. So if you ever see a sample SBAC, it's a split screen for 8-year-olds that they need to maneuver. There's the text is on one side, that's only half a screen wide, and then the questions are on the other half. So they need to scroll up and down, vertically, horizontally, to see the questions, to see the text. With 18 tools, they don't know how to use. They can reflect on their learning and make a Flipgrid video for you. They can show you Google Slides and rock that, but they don't know this because we don't do the practice test.
And there's nothing else like it.
Yeah.
No.
You're not going to use it in your adult life. You're not going to use it in the SAT.
And that, you almost get the feeling that, especially in a high-achieving district where students develop their own internal reward system for doing well, they have high standards for themselves, they hit a test method like this that they're not comfortable with, that they haven't been drilling in, they don't know what the 18 tools are. They might develop a learned helplessness and just cruise through it in 40 minutes.
Go ahead.
I think it's really important to look at, like, what does any instrument tell you before you invest that amount of time and energy into it? And does it tell you something that is helpful for instruction? Important to know for looking at curriculum checks. I'm looking at Michelle. This whole piece right here, next week we're spending 3 days in this room as coaches and as a leadership team, and we're looking at skills and how we're holding kids accountable for skills in the curriculum when we teach it and when they need to apply it, and also advised by standards. So it's not that we're not doing this work, it's that does this work have to be translated into a standardized test that tells us nothing?
I think the biggest takeaway on this slide, and half of your question is that we're not teaching it. We weren't teaching it then. We were test prepping. We weren't teaching it.
Yeah,
We were practicing workbooks. It wasn't teaching. It was test prep, which is not the same as teaching. I think it's an important distinction to make.
I mean, I still have in a closet somewhere because when Tom came in, I was like, oh, thank goodness. I can get rid of all of my test prep books because we had in 3rd grade a DRP workbook, comprehension workbooks, and everything we bought was related directly to that CMT. That's how I spent my day.
And kids weren't reading real books.
They were not reading books, my library was not there, so, it was tough.
But we all did that around the state. I'm
Mhm.
guilty as a principal,
We did.
I did worse.
Gail,
Yeah.
aren't these SBACs administered 3 times a year too, so is there?
No, it's once a year.
Just
No, once a year. However, I think what you're thinking of is this next piece. You know, communities are giving those practice tests, they're called interim assessment blocks.
Yeah,
So you might be thinking that it's 3 times a year. They're actually giving a small slice, and it's not computer adaptive, so you can actually know what question types to practice more. And that's exactly, you know, I pulled this up because it was in the Hartford Courant, and it just so happened that on the SBAC website, there's a video about how Lime is using those blocks
Practice test.
and how they're informing their instruction after those practice tests. So here's a block, you know, an example of the different practice tests that you can have. And just take a look at some of these: editing, research, brief writes. I'm going to show you, and look at the number of items. And note that the science test is coming out with practice tests as well. And this piece is how it impacts your year. And Michelle, again, can speak to this.
That was again back several years ago, probably 7, 8 years ago. Leading up, so we would practice throughout the year on a daily, you know, in a language arts block. But leading up to the test, so usually the test was always, the CMT was always given in early March. So we would have like 3 months with this very intensive drill and kill, these workbook items. So, you know, 1 week would be all DRP passages. We would just constantly do it, reassess, pull small groups to decide these kids aren't getting it, what else can we do? Let's send them, you know, to intervention. I mean, we made so many decisions based on this right here, just leading right up to that test till March. I mean, Michelle will remember.
School.
You were, oh, that's right, you weren't in, yeah. you weren't
It
in-
definitely
That
impacts
was my
educational
life. Yeah.
time, which is the point. So here's the last claim, is that we have a design for curriculum and assessment, and we do hold our students to high achievement standards, and actually those higher than tested in the Connecticut SBAC. This is what the Connecticut SBAC is designed after. This is called Webb's Depth of Knowledge. And you can see the highest end of the pyramid is the more complex test items. So the high end of the pyramid is really about taking things and applying them to unlike situations. So for every parent in the community who's heard of our performance-based assessments, they're always way up here. That doesn't mean that we don't test skills and concepts and recall and all of those pieces. We do that through our universal assessments. We do that along the way. But these are lower lying concepts and skills. These are very low level thinking things. If you look at writing according to this piece, and this is again what SBAC is designed for, but actually has eliminated a lot of the higher level stuff. This is one assessment that we have in grade 8. I'll give you a minute to look at that. They're comparing literary elements across 2 texts. They're looking at how the elements of a dystopia and their book fit together, and they're taking a position. So they're way up here in this one task. You saw the calendar of assessments along the way. This is
These
the
are
only
patterns throughout our entire experience. These are all over our curriculum, K-12.
Here's one reading block, okay? Here's the targets. Here's the levels of thinking that you just saw. And if you look at the reading units, just real quickly, you can pick out informational text, tackling complex text. And you can see analysis within them or across text, text features, text structures. We're doing this work. 1 grade 3 assessment. We're doing it authentically, and we're analyzing it teacher by teacher, student by student. State Department of Connecticut issued a huge caution to using this assessment in order to inappropriately practice it, reduce testing time, giving back instructional time. and saying that the standards should guide the curriculum and instruction, not the results from the test. This is right out of the State Department of Ed. But yet our accountability system tells us something opposite. So go back to that Harvard Business Review article, and it talks in particular about standardized assessment tools in education. And it talks about how kids can perform well on tests but falter when they need to apply it to jobs, to materials that makes a difference. And I think that the basis of my in-depth research really says that it's important for us to be very mindful of this particular assessment and what it does not do.
I think our question is really, about good job or bad job, and really the question is right work or wrong work. And I'm pretty confident we're focused on the right work.
I have one question. So when you get your test scores for your kid, it shows you last year and this year's scores. Is there last year how they did, the grade before, and then the current test that you got?
I don't believe it shows you last year.
It does. I got it today. Yeah, I got it today. So I'm just wondering is there?
Oh, the growth scores, good.
Oh, the growth targets, right.
Well, it's those two bars, and it shows you where your score is. It shows you where they were last year and what the range. You know what your range. Is there a correlation at all, or it's just every test is completely independent? So a kid who did well last year and is in even the whole range, is in a lower range than the following year? Is that something parents should look at?
They're assigning you an achievement level, so each score has an achievement
No,
level.
I understand that, but if you're
The score changes as the kids get older, so the achievement threshold changes.
I understand that. They show that on the bars as well.
Yeah.
But if your range of achievement, which is the whole plus or minus, so it's a big range.
Yeah.
But if that whole thing is even higher than where they are a year later, is there a correlation between those two things? Not at all. They're just independent, like snapshots in time, and they have nothing to do with each other?
Well, I mean, the state would claim if you look at the plus or minuses, right?
Yeah.
Your plus or minus the year before could be different than your plus or minus this year on your student score.
Okay.
So they're saying that we've set growth targets according to those scores. What I see is a huge amount of variability in how those scores are even constructed.
Right.
So how the growth targets are set, I think directly relates to the amount of question that you have in the validity of the assessment and reliability.
Okay.
I know that's really complicated, but in essence, I would say no. Would somebody else say yes? Probably.
Right. I just didn't know if it was completely kind of independent every year. Like every year it's its own little universe of assessing the scores, and they don't have any. I mean, ideally you'd want to see your kids score higher every year. You don't really want to see your kids.
But this year they took items out that they tested on last year. So
No, when they took out those items, they did that a couple of years ago.
Okay.
Right.
They
So I
took
didn't
out
know
the
if
more
it's
complex
any
thinking.
use for parents to look year over year or not.
Your best information about your child is the ongoing assessments that happen in the classroom.
Yeah.
We do a lot of assessing, and we do it individualized, and we also do it in small group settings and larger group settings. We don't do it in the construct of an instrument that has no bearing on anything else we do.
And we use standardized measures as well as a mix too. So, yeah.
And I have a couple questions. I don't know if that's the last question. I'll try and follow along, but interest.
Go ahead.
You're up.
Okay. I recognize that it's already late, but I think this is worth discussing and thinking about. So let me start by saying I don't think that we should be spending time teaching kids how to do better on the SBAC. I support that fully. And I think that both the SBAC and the SAT have a lot of questions about their validity, that they measure what they say they're going to measure. But I do want to point out a couple things. One is that the SBAC and the SAT are designed to do two similar sounding but different things. That the SBAC is purporting to measure what a student knows, whereas the SAT is purporting to measure or predict how well a student will do in college. So slightly different things for those two different tests. I think it's difficult to compare those together. I think the SAT, we're using the SAT a lot in Madison, right? And when we talk about how our our kids do on the SAT, we're proud of that. That's a good thing. But similar to the SBAC, and I know a lot of people at College Board, they're very nice people, but the main study that indicates that the SAT is incrementally more predictive than grades, which we know is the best way of predicting success or GPA in aggregate. The only study that's been put out that says the SAT does better than those was funded by College Board. So it's hard to say that that's any useful, any more useful than anything else as a test.
Why, you think there's a conflict of interest in that?
Yeah. So just weigh that. Like I think it's important for the board to have a sense of that, because when we're pleased with how we're doing on the SAT, and maybe we're not pleased by how things look on the SBAC, those are both problematic in just different directions. It's not necessarily good that we're doing well in one and not in another if they both aren't externally valid. I will say, I'll just pose the question, Tom and Gail and anybody else, that I think comes up. So what should we think about the fact that when we leave validity aside, which I think we're probably all agreeing on, what do we think about the fact that both for achievement and growth scores and everything else, we are so reliably below the average and below the rest of our dirt? What should we think about year after year? The SBAC reliably spitting out sort of the same average scores for the district.
I think a couple of things. I think first of all, you'll find a pretty good correlation between, socioeconomics and the scores, but more importantly, you'll find a higher correlation with districts who don't do the curriculum work that we do and focus more on engineering their programs to score higher. And I think it's a false indication of kids actually learning more. But I'm very clear by talking to my colleagues and Gail as well at some of the state symposiums that is, and I live this under the CMT as a principal, that has been an operating principle, PLE, of school districts across the state now for the better part of, say, 12, 15 years.
Well, are the other schools in the DERG training the kids on the testing?
Yes, they take the practice test.
They do.
Well, to take the practice test, you have to train the tools. We train the tools before the test in a humane way, so kids don't walk into a test and not know what to do. We do not spend from September to March doing that.
Drilling.
Yeah. But I think that's a big part, Greg. I think that you'll find a lot of districts that are buying materials that are completely aligned to the SBAC, in addition to the practice test. I mean, I think all the insidious things that I did as a principal, I think that's happening all over the state. And no one's going to market that or broadcast that.
A related question, conversely, are there any districts that are seeing the same phenomena that we're seeing, that are interested in this research, are doing it? Or second question, is there any independent effort, a research effort, to look at this on a more broad scale basis to report this out? I mean, we've got this information in here. Is this going anywhere?
So Gail's report, we have run by a couple at the university level. One of them's a consultant of ours. I'll get to your first question in a second. One of them's a consultant of ours, so we feel there's a conflict there. So we wanted to have, a colleague kind of look at it at that level. We've had a couple of folks that we respect at that level to look at it. It's Gail's work. I'm not taking credit for any of it. But we do want to have, some kind of critical friend look at it and give us feedback on it. I don't think, to get to your first question, we'll find a ton of districts, but we will find more in the Tri-State Consortium that are very interested. So a lot of the districts that did the visit here have been in touch with us, wanting to know the kind of work that we're doing. We'll find more of our intellectual peers at that level.
I would have to think that just for a researcher, this would be provocative to at least investigate and see if this is where else this might be happening and what does it mean for anything.
I was going to start with CAPS, just with the Public School Superintendents Association, because there was there was a fleeting movement afoot to revisit the state test a few years ago, particularly around the time where Connecticut monkeyed with the actual test itself, which was really a political decision. There was a lot of blowback, and that was a way to kind of quiet it down, we'll make the test shorter. So they got the best part of the test out of it, the performance task. I mean, you can just Google that one. That was clearly a political move. And there was some movement between the CEA and CAPS and some other groups to kind of question the actual test itself. It's a part of the fabric now You know, you look behind the curtain and you see what Gail presented, it's very clear that this is fool's gold, if you follow it. You know, I couldn't sit here and advocate, and you're listening to one of our teachers. Michelle can come up with, you know, countless colleagues in our system that would say the same thing that she just said. And Michelle Horn works with all these folks. So this isn't something, you know, that isn't, you know, it is across the whole system as far as we're doing the right work. This is not representative of it. And that's why it's incumbent upon us to kind of present to the public the work that we are doing in a really, really compelling way, but also the numbers and data that support that as well.
It becomes a self-fulfilling problem because when districts realize that for optics, they need to keep up, especially in the high-performing nerds. You know, they lay down arms and do what needs to be done to try and get their scores up comparatively.
That's not hard.
Suggestion for the privates becomes part of the arms race and then use this to,
And we really are rare in Connecticut as a district that's been brave enough to take a bold position and not bother with that and walk away from that for the most part.
And SAT, and Greg, thank you for bringing that up. That's a very good point about the SAT. That aside, our kids are ending up in great places. And they're ending up in, you know, by and large. And we're not perfect. I'll never whitewash perfection. We're a human organization based on infallible people. You know, we do make mistakes and we do fall short of the mark. But by and large, our kids are ending up in great places because of the work that we do. And they're ending up with great opportunities because of the work that we do. You know, I stand by that. Raising scores, if the charge was next year we want to raise scores, I could tell you 3 or 4 things right now that will raise scores, and not one stitch of learning will improve. We can raise scores.
And what colleges are looking for right now, and our kids are excelling at, is getting to college and being able to look at things from a visionary perspective and make connections across disciplines. That's what we're teaching in this district. We're not teaching, you know, the straight, you know, mathematics or language skills that get you good grades on those assessments.
And I think that the alumni survey that you're going to do will help inform some of that in terms of readiness and performance.
I think if you took this test and you gave it to what is perceived as a, you know, we talked about this word before, exclusive private school, and just dropped it in on Hopkins or dropped it in on Foote, I don't think you would see high performance levels at all. I think you'd see probably mid-league, you know, kind of performance levels. I'll never see that. I could just say that's my opinion. I'll never be able to prove that, but it's just my gut.
You know, one thing that occurs to me that I maybe haven't connected before hearing all this is in the, and I don't have everything in front of me, so maybe we do this, in the measures that we do use to see if we're meeting our goals, right? Is teacher feedback built into that in a way that we can, you know, we hear a lot from teachers and to talk about how they think their classes are doing. Is that built into our measures?
How we're doing as an individual student, how an individual student's progressing, and then taking an aggregate?
No, I'm kind of thinking almost like a temperature test to see from year to year some sampling of the teachers or everyone in terms of, you know, students or how students are learning, like what they're seeing, because they're the experts who are on the ground. There's some way that we could capture that to get a sense of are they feeling like things are continuing to trend in a good direction? Because absent standardized tests, which we know, again, have all kinds of validity problems, that, especially for younger kids where grades aren't as big of a factor yet, I wonder if that would help us get a picture of, you know, what we're hearing from one teacher today and some teachers here and there about what they're seeing on the ground.
So a couple thoughts. One, a great opportunity is the end of the year conferences that principals have with their teachers. I think to do something like that, and survey in that way. But I think more importantly, when you do that, you have an opportunity to go beyond this narrow myopic focus of just language arts and math. When parents talk about, schools and what makes them feel good about it, rarely do they just lead and then end with, they do really good in reading and math. It's so much broader and more than that to talk about how kids are developing their thinking skills, their soft skills, how they're developing the ability to interact and collaborate, those 21st century capacities in particular that we've identified. I'd be interested in information around that as well.
Yeah, I would encourage to try and find some ways that we could build that in the future, because, that's such valuable information that I'd love to hear about.
Great. Anybody else? Thank you, Michelle and
Thank you.
Michelle.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it so much.
You too.
Great to see you. Any questions?
Shoot, my oldest daughter, who's now a junior in college,
Ah!
started with her in kindergarten. Kindergarten before
Miss
she was
Chris.
in third grade.
Michelle.
Yeah, right.
The good old
Yeah.
I'm so proud of you, she must be like 12 now.
She is. Judy Hauser, yeah.
Go to sleep, you have school tomorrow.
I know.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you both.
Just real quick, in case you don't have the budget assumptions, we're going to ask for board action on December 4th. So we brought it to the board last time. If you don't have copies, this is the proposed by. So it doesn't change.
They're the same, nothing changed.
Yeah, nothing changed. Thank you.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Michelle, for being here.
Okay,
I'm done.
you're done. Okay. Board member comments. Hearing none, we're going to. Did you say you have a comment?
Are we gonna go through these because we'll go through them?
Yeah, I just asked, does anybody have any
I
questions?
didn't look at it yet, but
Oh.
December 4th, we go through them again?
Yeah, yep, and we also have several budget workshops.
Is that one of them, the December 4th, is it?
We vote on, we have to adopt them on December.
Oh,
4th.
sorry, yes, we're adopting these budget assumptions on
December 4th?
Correct. 4th.
So then, does that mean we go through this now, or December 4th we go through?
Well, they were handed out at the last meeting.
But we didn't do anything, we just had them.
Well, right, so do you have questions? What do you want to do with them?
Well, I thought we would discuss them. Are we going to discuss these, or do we discuss them on the 4th? That was my question.
If you're ready to discuss them, I would suggest you do it now so that we could adopt them on the 4th.
Yeah, agreed. I did not have anything to discuss based on this. It seemed pretty clear cut. Does anybody have any? Questions? Greg, you got it last meeting or in between?
Yep, I've got it.
Okay.
The only question I had was, I know at one point we discussed putting a pause on one of the curriculum cycles. Didn't we say that that was going to happen?
That's in your report.
Or we were
Yes.
considering
No,
it?
you're absolutely correct.
So is that in here somewhere? Or has that not been decided, or that is decided? That's the only question I had.
That was part of today's curriculum committee meeting, where because of redistricting, part of the curriculum will be on pause.
So should that go, I think that should go in here. Because that should have some kind of a financial impact, right?
It
Yeah,
does.
It does, right?
Well, we put respond to identified priorities
Yeah,
to the
that's-
curriculum cycle, number 13.
That's what I
Um,
interpreted that as.
Yes, and
Okay. All right, so that's it.
But
Make
there were-
adjustments to one-year cycles and so forth. Okay, that's fine.
And that'll get, that, just correct me if I'm wrong, Gail, will get more clearly delineated, right?
Oh, mine looked different from last week, that's why. Because this has this has the curriculum cycles listed, the last ones that were passed out. That's what I was thinking. So this looks different. I don't know why. My October 27th.
What number is that?
Oh,
Mine
I'm sorry,
says
this is
October
from the year
23rd.
before. I have all my stuff together. I'm like,
That's
ooh,
why
I
it
have
looks
17.
different?
That's why it looks different, okay. All right.
Violet, did you have any questions?
No, I think that most of these These were the must-haves, I'm assuming.
Well, must-haves, I think, depends on,
These are
The board.
operating budget items that we have already, that we are supporting, that these are the mandatory ones.
well, we have to vote on whether we support them.
They're just, this is a guiding document.
Yes.
To
Okay.
really inform the budget creation.
Okay,
That's what it is.
okay, thank you.
That doesn't mean that if we vote on this, if throughout the budget process, something
We
here may
can't.
be added in, or something may fall off still. This isn't set in stone.
Thank you, that's very
That's a
helpful.
better way of saying it, thank you.
I would recommend adding one thing to item 14, adding a bullet point to item 14, to professional development. Not so much to direct that anything change, but rather to capture something that's already occurring, and to be explicit about it in our budget assumptions. And that would be something along the lines of provide comprehensive ongoing professional development targeted for psychosocial development and of students and its impact on student safety and security. So items like bullying, violence in schools, issues that sometimes arise, at sporting events when kids are not acting appropriately, or other events when kids aren't acting appropriately, cyber bullying, proper and improper use of social media, all of that stuff. And I know it's already going on. And I
Memorialize it.
Yeah, just.
It's an
yeah,
expectation.
Exactly. So that nobody questions why we're spending money on that kind of professional development.
And Violet, I'm sorry I stepped out, I had to go to the next room, but the purpose of this is the board to direct the administration on some of the broad things that you would expect. So Seth's point, you would expect to see that in the budget then, as a board, if there's consensus.
Okay, thank you.
And then what I present to you, what the board adopts is what the board adopts.
Okay, thank you. Does that help? Any other questions?
I just want to know, so in point 11, then that would be the addition of a school counselor shared between the two elementary schools.
Yes, so we did that this morning at the curriculum committee meeting, and we're going to repeat that presentation, as we usually do, a little more truncated version of December 4th would be on those two items. We did them both this morning.
Right.
We're going to steal Galen's thunder for his curriculum report.
Sorry, I know.
No, they're both eagle-eyed, I mean, right, less for me to say.
That's great, I'm happy to, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
missed the meeting this morning, that's great.
And you'll get more of a report from Galen, and then again at our next meeting.
And this literacy coach was the one that you spoke of last year?
Yes.
That's going on this year?
Yes, exactly.
But are we adopting this tonight?
No,
or
The
not?
fourth.
December
December 4th.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is
All
just
right.
the second
Second time
distribution of it.
this year,
Yeah. I missed the first meeting.
Yep.
It was, yeah.
Good questions. Anybody else? Okay. You're up. Curriculum and Student Development Committee.
All right, well, I'll start at the end. The need for a literacy coach was discussed. Secondly, we'll need to, some parts of the curriculum cycle might be delayed pending the impact of redistricting. All right. So we discussed the counseling program. Jen Hawley, Eliza Hayes, Rachel Killian, and Tom discussed need for elementary school counseling. Social and emotional wellness are necessary conditions for learning. The question is, how does the Madison Public School District take a systems approach to fostering social and emotional learning for all students? And the feeling is that the earlier these needs are addressed, the better. We're looking for leverage points. At present, we have no elementary school counselors at the K through 5 level. I believe that's correct. Ms. Hawley, Hayes, and Killian also discussed the proactive day-to-day tasks involved to meet the needs of Madison students within the recommended American School Counseling Association. The second item on the agenda had to do with grade 8 writing unit, number 2. So we saw a little bit of that in your presentation. It wasn't the exact unit. So Martha is an inspirational teacher, and her theme was giving 8th grade students more choice in order to find their voice in their assignments. Students are now able to choose their genre for their major writing projects from short story, poetry, vignette, and chapter 1 forms. They then compile these onto a digital portfolio and try to embrace, what are the criteria? Creativity and reflection from the 21st century capacities. All right, the next item on the agenda was a presentation by Julie Johnson on a grade 11 U.S. history course. She discussed some cleanups and revisions to U.S. history grade 11. These changes included increased student choice and removing some redundancies between economics and history courses. The changes made it easier for new teachers to understand the material and get a better experience for students. And we're almost there. Natasha Zanelli presented major changes to a Writing for Career in College course for grade 12 students. The purpose was to enhance the curriculum from a level 3 to a level 2 course, and it involved more writing. Students are expected to maintain a digital portfolio of major types of writing, and it's a little more career related. And I think that's about the bottom line.
Thank you.
I'll
Any
say that
questions?
for-
Communications.
The Communications Committee met twice since our last full board meeting, October 30th and this evening. We worked together to finalize 2 communications that will be going out, one on the work of the Tri-Board School Facilities Working Group, and then one on the educational program, co-curricular activities offered at the high school. Our next topic will be focused on the budget process and public participation, to be drafted and finalized in the next month, and then to be made available in January or so. I met with Rita regarding our website, and she created a new tab for us on the Board of Ed website. It says from the Board of Ed, and that's where we'll post these messages. There's also a place where people can click to subscribe, so that when new things are posted, they'll get a notice of that. And then once they're posted there, people can also, Rita will post it to social media, so the district Facebook, the town Facebook, district and town Twitter, and so on. I've reached out to the source to see if they'd be willing to publish it for us as well. In the meantime, we're doing some outreach to groups in town to share that information. Kirk has offered to reach out to realtors, Chamber of Commerce. We talked with Ryan from the Economic Development Commission. And the Newcomers Club reached out also to ask someone to come and speak to the group later this spring. So really focusing on that public outreach and communication. End of report. Any questions?
Facilities.
All right, well, we met last week, and we had a report from Bill McMinn, who was reporting on his own behalf and also on behalf of the superintendent, who was unable to be at that meeting. And the report involved the fact that we are 50% through our planned cycled maintenance budget for the year so far, which is pretty much on target. Bill discussed some of the items on the docket for maintenance with the remainder of the budget that's left for this year, which included items for the summer. And then we had a riveting report from Galen on the progress of the Tri-Board Working Group that he sits on. And he delivered a recitation of the report that he gave at the working group meeting prior to our meeting. And he just did a whole bunch of homework and dug up some fascinating statistics and did a really great job, and it was awesome.
I got 3 credits.
I never actually graduated.
I got 3 credits for the course.
And then we ended our meeting with a discussion about the Brown School Opal project, and we discussed what Bill's plans are for proceeding with that this summer. it, end of report.
Any questions? Finance Committee.
So this will be the last time I guess give this because due to just things that have happened since we started the school year, I don't feel that I can be an effective chair of this committee, so I stepped down as of last Monday night as chair.
So, just in the discussion piece, I guess I'll take the reins, at least for the time being. First of all, I'm very sorry to see you go. I've only been chair for a little while, but I've twice now appointed you as chair to that committee, not only at your request, but because I see fiscal matters as being a real strength of yours. So I will very much miss having you on that committee.
Well, I'll still be on the committee, I'm just not a chair.
As chair of that committee. And as board chair, it's my responsibility to designate committee members, as well as to ensure that the committees run smoothly and cooperatively, so that the work of the board can continue in an efficient way. And I've worked really hard to balance the designations of the committee, both with board member requests, as well as workload and the overall responsibilities of the board. So because of Happy's resignation, it left us with a little bit of a quandary, so bear with me and feel free, anybody, to pipe in if I get this wrong. But I think the best thing to do, and I've sought district council to help just make sure my head is on straight with this. But because our bylaws state that no board member may chair more than one committee, it leaves us with really two options, because everybody has done a really great job of stepping up and chairing a committee. And so Violet or Kirk were where it was left. And Violet, I know you have said you are not interested in chairing a committee, and Kirk has volunteered to do so. So it made it easy, which is why I didn't call you personally to ask your opinion. And so I would like to recommend, especially since Happy, you've made it clear you'd like to stay as part of finance, and I think that's a strength of yours, so I fully support that, as I'm sure the rest of the board does. But our bylaws also state that it doesn't state that how many members may be on a committee, and so I would like to take Kirk up on his offer and ask him to chair the committee and keep the rest of the committee members the same. That is pending board action, so we will have to add an agenda item tonight to vote on that. But as chair, that's kind of where I landed.
So-
Any discussion?
Yeah, do we discuss this now or before the vote?
Well, I think first we have to vote to add it. Greg, is that right?
That's correct, but you can vote to add it now. It could appear
Right.
here on the agenda.
Okay, so I would like to move to add the addition of Kirk Barnaby as chair of the Finance Committee.
And a member, a voting member and chair
Correct.
of the Finance Committee.
Did you get that, Laura? Thank you. And all in favor, or no. I don't, oh yeah, I guess.
We need a motion to add it, now we need a motion.
Right,
Yeah.
so this was just the motion to add it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention. Motion carries.
Does
That's
that
just,
come out of committee?
no, not really, because we didn't have a chair. So yeah, that's why we needed the second. And then we will vote on that at item 14. Does that make sense to you? That's where I added it. Okay. So moving on. Oh, go ahead. Do you have any discussion? Sorry. I didn't mean to.
I've got discussion points that kind of are general, and also discussion points that go to the motion that we're going to be voting on. Generally, I would like to say that it's disappointing to have a chair of the Finance Committee basically withdraw from that post at the very outset of the budget season. It has caused ripples and issues for the board that Katie was being very generous and kind to not really go into the depth of the issues that it has created, but suffice to say that the leadership of this board, and that's the full executive committee, not me, not just Katie, have been very concerned about making sure especially that there is partisan balance, for lack of a better term, in our committee structure leadership. And so there were many other options for filling that post that would not have included the same bipartisan effort to keep things balanced. And the fact that it was a decision that was taken based on things that occurred and not based on the personal inability to serve, to me is, it's not inexcusable, you have a right to do that, but it was problematic, and I just don't want it to pass without that being noticed.
Okay. I would also like to say that the occurrences were not done in a vacuum. They were a response to other things that were problematic. I think I'm being more than kind to not go into them at this moment. And I also would like to say it's completely my prerogative. I don't think that I could be an effective chair, which would not be serving the best interests of the board. I would rather see someone who could do a better job and be more effective in that place than myself, because I don't feel that I am going to be effective based on everything that has happened.
Well, it is your prerogative.
Yes, thank you.
But
I hope we can discuss that. But I need to do it now.
I mean, I would just like to say that we're all here to serve the
Do
schools and do
the
the best thing,
district.
and I have the
Yes.
highest respect for Happy.
as do I. I just don't like what happened recently, but that doesn't change my respect for you as a person and as a board member.
Any more discussion? Personnel.
Personnel Committee met on November 8th with representatives from the Teachers Negotiation Unit. We met in a mediation. I will just to say that it was a lengthy meeting.
Understatement.
And I think I can fairly represent that a lot of effort, a lot of good thought processes went into it. And I would represent that as a result of what I would say was good progress reached on November 8th, that we are now in the process of waiting for a ratification process. The Teamsters is scheduled to meet with Personnel Committee on November 27th. End of report.
Any questions, comments? Policy Committee.
Hello.
Oh. I was like.
Just a reminder that we have moved our policy committee meeting to next week, thanks to the kindness of the communications committee swapping with us. So we have no further report at this time.
Thank you. Learn liaison.
Oh, yeah, I apologize, I'm gonna have to give that report next meeting
That's fine.
because I didn't have a chance to compile the report yet, partly because of some of the stuff that's been going on with leadership.
Sure, and we will, just with this new system of rotating, you all should have gotten a calendar invite for the month that you signed up for or were appointed to. If you are not able to go in person, a synopsis will be shared with you, and that's what you will report, what you will use to report on your month. Okay, thank you. And end of report. I've always wanted to say that. Tri-Board Working Group for Board of Education Facilities. Did Kirk hand off to you on that?
Yeah, Kirk really should speak because he does all the heavy lifting for the Board of Ed. Basically, we meet every Wednesday morning. We discuss the calendar, strategies. We're trying to synthesize past surveys and learn and schedule public forums. We'll meet tomorrow. There's a tri-board meeting on the 14th.
Tomorrow evening.
Tomorrow night? My goodness. Right. Thank you.
And also, there's a meeting, a public meeting that the Tri-Board Working Group is holding on the 28th, is it, at Ryerson?
That is correct. I think we
28th
notified
at 7
Wes
p.m.
about that.
at Ryerson.
Right, so I'd encourage everybody to look at the calendar.
And that's to discuss whether there are options, to begin the discussion with the public of whether there are potential alternatives to the $100 million maintenance problem that we've identified over the next 10 years. So that's, should be an interesting meeting, and we really encourage as many people to come to that as possible.
Any other discussion? Audience response? She looks down.
I actually am going to say something, if you don't mind.
Not a bit.
First of all, it probably did occur to you that your meeting on the 28th is now the same as that MAID meeting on the vaping, the same night. That's kind of unfortunate, because I have to tell you, and I only have elementary school kids, that we were talking about the vaping thing, about going to the MAID meeting. And we will certainly encourage people to go to the facilities meeting. You know that that's like the tri-board, like there's a lot of us interested in going to that, but we're kind of like.
It will not be the only one to either of the tri-board community sessions either.
Okay, because there's a lot, both discussions are happening, and then we realized, ooh, it's on the same night.
And sadly,
There's another meeting
the
that
group,
night too.
the tri-board group actually only had 2 or 3 days to pick from between now and Christmas break. It was
I
that
believe
difficult
it.
with all the
There's a
competing
lot of stuff going on.
factors, so. And that one did slide under the radar because we were looking at all the town meetings. We weren't looking at the PTO
I
focus.
know.
That's
The MAID,
it's a
though,
big miss,
is
though.
really powerful.
It is. It's a big miss on our
And the
part.
parents
Yeah.
really feel connected with it, because it is of a huge concern in the community of,
Understood.
you know, they do important work.
Oh,
So-
and yeah, as a parent of 2 high school kids.
Yeah, it's like, and for those of us who know that that's going to be, those conversations are coming down, any education
Yeah.
that we can have ahead of time
Agreed.
is huge.
Liz, we meet tomorrow morning and I'll make sure to raise that.
It's just unfortunate, because there's such great opportunities for information.
Yeah.
You know, that was the one thing. And the other goes back to the testing scores, and I have to tell you, there was a lot of conversation about the testing scores when they came out. I don't know, I mean, I have a text message between my mother and my sister and I about the SBACs between Guilford and Madison, and why Madison dropped so heavily. Just getting the information out there as to why we don't is huge. Because when you look at how you rate your town, when people go to look at school districts to move their kids into, testing scores do kind of count, and they don't understand why they count, but people just naturally assume they should count. And so getting that information out sooner rather than later, because those testing scores, that was a big discussion.
Yeah.
And it was quite shocking, because we know we have great schools and great curriculum, but that, numbers are numbers, it's data. And data is important whether or not you want to believe it or not, but it really is. So the sooner we can get the information that you shared tonight out as to why we're not, and I don't believe in testing, you know, teaching to the test at all, but that would be huge, because that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about that with communications committee, as well as when you see the data and see.
Yes.
And hear the teachers talk about it, it makes perfect sense.
Right, no, and trust me, as, you know.
But if
my
you're
son
coming
is-
from
my son is
Alabama
currently in
looking
third
at it.
grade. He's gonna be taking the test for the first time this year.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's as powerful as what I hear directly from the teacher all the time. I don't pay attention to it, I'm really not interested.
Yeah.
But I do kind of understand why it's important for people to look at data and have some sort of assessment tool. But you need to provide the information as to why we're not finding this well with it.
Well, and regardless, the fact that there is that information out there and that there are statistics and numbers and metrics.
People feel very
creates-
comfortable with that.
It creates a perception in people
Yes.
that needs to be addressed
That
if we're
for some
not.
reason, there's something wrong here.
Yes.
And that was the perception that kind of came out. And
Counter
especially if you
narrative.
look at just our neighbor over there that seemed to do so much better than us, but with the, you know, you.
No, your point is
It
well
was a
taken.
weird conversation that happened when the scores came out.
Thank
So,
you.
The sooner you can get that out, the better, I'm just saying, because, I mean,
Gail's got a 24-page report that we can.
I know, and it was really complicated.
It is.
But that's why I'm sorry, and I've never heard
we need to
of
soundbite it.
that.
That's right.
That's Kirk's bill.
It is, it's very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome.
Is that it? End of report? Do you want to say it? Thank you. Okay, so I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 9th, 2018 Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
I need a second.
Can we have a quick discussion?
Discussion?
There's one mistake. For the, where we added back in the vote that we took on looking, I didn't vote no. It says I voted against it.
And which item?
Action item 13.
Furniture?
No, you're in the wrong meeting.
Oh, sorry.
The SRO.
Right.
There's
SRO, yeah.
two. Gotcha.
SRO. Remember we asked
Yep,
Laura to
that's
go
right.
back and look at the tape and
That's
add
right.
it in
That's right.
and look at the vote. It just says that I voted against it, but I didn't.
Okay.
So,
You just abstained, right?
no, I voted yes.
But you voted
Yes,
yes.
it is.
Okay, I'll make the change.
So it's approved as amended, is it? Thing?
Yes, thank you.
Or we vote to approve it as
Yeah.
amended?
Did I do this?
That's part of the consent agenda.
Oh, it was, okay, thank you.
So motion.
So, motion to accept the amendment as amended?
So moved. So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? I think I have to, is that the one in it?
Yes.
I abstain?
So you missed the 23rd.
No, she missed the night.
No,
Yeah.
you missed, no, the 23rd.
23rd?
Between Greg and Kirk missed the 9th.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got it.
You're right.
Yeah.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the minutes of October 23rd Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. I need a motion to approve the 2019-2020 program of study.
So moved.
Didn't want to kill a tree, but
Second?
every year.
Second. I love it. Discussion? All in
What,
favor?
she
Impressive.
presented, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Aye.
I didn't get to see it, so I have to abstain from this.
Greg, there'll be a copy in your mailbox. We do a hard copy every year for board members.
Okay,
You're abstaining?
I'll pull it out, thanks.
You're getting all this, right?
You're abstaining, yeah.
I need are we all together? Okay, I need a motion to approve the superintendent's professional goals for the 2018-2019 school year.
Anyone needs a copy of
Motion?
that as well?
Yeah, I don't, well, wait.
Well, let's
that's
discuss.
discussion.
Yeah, motion?
Oh, so moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion?
I did not get a copy of any goals after the first meeting. Did everybody else get a copy of them?
No, I think
So
that
we
they were
had that
handed
meeting.
out.
Right, but then you guys had the meeting with Tom in executive session, and you had a discussion about that, but then I
Oh.
never got a final copy. So I don't know what changed. Did that get sent to the board?
No,
Nothing changed.
nothing
We just took
changed.
out, Seth put a lot of text in, like explaining what was there, so that was just removed from the copy. But
Okay.
the actual substance didn't change.
Okay.
At least the three goals that went draft.
Yeah, the text was included for the purpose of walking the board through why we
No,
changed
I
the
understand
format.
that. I just didn't, you never sent out a final copy, so it's hard to vote
It was,
on
it was,
without-
it was in the minutes, or in the board packet this week?
No, it's not in the
The
board.
memo?
It was in the memo.
What did
I emailed it.
It was in the memo.
I just looked at my memo. I didn't see, maybe I'm looking at the
It was
wrong-
attached with it,
Okay.
yeah, it was two attachments.
Okay.
Are you comfortable?
Well, I'll just abstain just because I didn't look at them and I don't want
Okay.
to hold it up. 'cause,
Okay.
you know.
It's,
Yeah.
November. Thank you, I appreciate that. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain? Motion carries. You're on the clock. So now I'm adding the motion to approve adding a fourth member of the Finance Committee and Kirk Barnaby as chair. I need a motion. I need a second. Motion?
Motion.
So moved. Second?
Second.
Discussion?
The point I'd like to make on discussion is that while our bylaws don't prevent us from having any number of people serving on a committee, it's rare to have an even number of people serving on a committee, and certainly none of our other committees have done that, and that has not been our practice. And while I certainly support the addition of Kirk for his background and what he will bring to the committee, I support his appointment to that committee, and I support his elevation to chair of that committee. I am a little bit concerned about having 4 members on that committee because it can result in deadlock, and it also throws off the balance we've been trying to achieve on our board.
Sorry. It's interesting. It was a conversation with board council when this was an idea in it, and just if there is a 2-2 vote, then what do we do? And I have faith that the committee will work cooperatively with each other, and I believe that to be true. I do think it bears saying that I think this is a temporary solution for maybe a problem, as I said earlier, that we can discuss further as a board, in terms of how we conduct business, et cetera. So maybe a solution to that problem is saying that through this budget season, we will do a 4-person committee so that we can move the ball forward and continue the very important, one of the things that board council said to me that stuck out was, if you were going to have a committee, it should be the finance committee and the policy committee. That those are the 2 really fundamental, foundational committees of any board of ed. For me, the most immediate and important thing to make sure happen was that we could continue to move forward. We're just at the beginning of budget season. So I would like to suggest or invite any comments about whether or not we could maybe go with this method until budget season is over and then revisit it as a board in terms of going back to a 3-member committee, maybe going to a bigger committee. I don't know right now, but I know that we've got to move the budget forward. Otherwise, it makes the rest of what we do difficult. Greg, are you trying to pipe in? There's weird sounds happening.
Yeah, those are my weird sounds.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, when I unmute, there's weird stuff.
That's okay.
So I am not inclined to vote in favor of this the way that it's constructed right now. And I want to say that, I support what Seth's saying about the balance of the committee. And obviously I support, Katie, your maintenance of the committee as one of our, or not moving forward the idea that we want to get rid of this committee, as our council has also suggested would be unwise. I think that this is one in a series of things that has come up that means accommodations are being made by the chair that lead to situations that are sticky for everybody in terms of 2-2 vote in this case, and imbalance of partisanship as Seth described, and other issues like that. So I'm not comfortable with the construction as it's been built here, although I recognize that it may be the only solution that we have to work with. I would be inclined to vote for a motion, if it were amended, that includes an automatic sunset, at which point Happy as the 4th member of the committee, because that's the construction that we have here, in order to maintain Happy on the committee, and not have Happy as chair, we have to have a 4-person committee. we're forced into that basically because of the construction of the other committees without pulling everything apart. So if there were an automatic sunset date of the fourth member of the committee, so in other words, if specifically we were voting on having a four-member committee with Kirk as chair of the committee through like May 31st of next year or something like that, at which point it would revert to a three-person committee and Happy would no longer be on the committee, I would vote in favor of that because I think that's specific and I think it acknowledges at least that this is a way bent over backwards to accommodate a request that doesn't fit in with the rest of how the committees are set up, nor does it align with the work that a lot of people are doing to make sure that we have equitable chairs. That's just my opinion. So I'm not sure where that goes, but there you are.
Well, you realize that that leaves us with 1 month of school and then I'm up for re-election. And I don't even know if I'm running again in November. So it's really, you're talking about a month's difference.
That actually sounds sort of punitive.
Yeah, I mean, I can only be on the committee if I'm chair. That seems ridiculous.
Well, it's
That's
because our bylaws say that, I mean, we're out of members. And if
Well,
we have members who are
unfortunately-
refusing to be chair and members who are resigning from chair, it puts me in a pickle in terms of
Yeah.
how are we going to move forward? How are we going to continue to function as a board?
Well, we have
We all-
we now have 7 committees with 9 members.
But we
which is
voted,
something
it's
that
a
we brought
majority.
up.
My job, Happy, is to build consensus. I understand you're not happy with the change in structure of the
Oh, no,
committees.
that's fine, I'm just
Or
saying,
that you think there
are
are too many,
consequences.
let me finish, or that you think there are too many committees, but that is what the board decided, the majority of the board voted for, I think by a lot, and that's what we're left with, so yes, it's your prerogative to say you don't want to do it, that is totally your prerogative, but it leaves the rest of the board either with more work to do, or, right, but then
I'm
the
not-
consequence of that is, and there was counsel given to me, which was, you know, when you make a choice, there's a consequence. I'm trying to accommodate it so that everybody is happy. And I think that long-term, having a 4-person committee doesn't, I think that's a valid point. And I'm just asking you to bend with us.
Right, yes, you are.
I just want to jump in. I don't intend to say too much, but someone mentioned that this sounds punitive, what I'm describing. I want to address that because I think that is far from accurate here. We are voting on completely changing the structure of a committee that have 4 people on it, which we haven't done on any of the other committees. That's an accommodation that's very kindly being suggested by the chair. What I'm suggesting is not punitive. I'm saying that is an accommodation that I think should have an official sunset date. There's no punishment happening here. A request was made by a member to no longer be the chair of the committee. That request has been honored. The request has been made by now a member of the board to stay on the committee. That request is being considered here. There's no punishment. Nothing's punitive. In fact, any accommodation to have a 4-member committee is just that. It's an accommodation. It's not punitive.
So let me say that it appears punitive when someone chooses not to be the chair or no longer can be the chair for whatever reason, that you then are asked to exit from your committee. That to me seems
Generally, what
punitive.
happens if someone can't serve as chair is they do vacate their seat on that
So
committee.
it's
That's
better
generally
never
what
to
happens.
accept chairmanship position.
Generally,
No, you're elected to serve.
But I have
But wait,
chosen
but-
not to be chair, so it seems, and I'm reflecting on myself, not necessarily you, Happy, but it seems like, and for personal reasons as well, I quite frankly have no more time in my life. But it seems like if you can't serve in the chair capacity, then you may be asked to step down.
No, yeah,
Nobody
if I
else,
may,
anybody
wait,
else?
can I address that? First of all, I want to make it clear as a member of the executive committee that we asked Happy 3 times if she would reconsider and stay
Sorry,
on
you
as
did?
chair.
Oh, you did?
As a committee, we
You asked?
did, the executive committee.
Based on what conversation?
I asked you on the phone the other
She asked
day.
me on the
No, you
phone.
didn't. You asked
We
me,
asked
said,
Galen
I'm
to
too
ask
busy
you,
to
and you
talk
did.
to you. Please call Galen and he'll tell you your options. That was one conversation. I missed the other 2 times. So let's be accurate. let's also be accurate that there are actions of people in this room that have caused this decision. This is not done in a vacuum. I am not going to go into it. I told you, I think this is in the best interest of the board. We have one member on the phone who brought up an idea. I don't think we necessarily have everybody else in agreement with that idea. If we do, fine, but there is a motion already to vote. We haven't moved to amend the motion.
Well, I would like to ask that other members who have not had an opportunity to weigh in have an opportunity to weigh in.
I started responding to this, and I just want to finish this answer because it will help, I think, answer your specific question, which is, when the committees only have 3 people, and one of them is the chair. And so when the chair drops down, and it requires us, in order to maintain balance, it requires us to bring someone else from that person's party in order to maintain balance in to serve as chair. And in this particular case, because Galen can't serve as chair, he's of the same party, but he can't serve as chair because he's already a chair of a different committee. So it created a chain reaction thing where it's, the way we described it was it's physically impossible to be able to remain on the committee with only 3 people on it, with a 3-person voting committee. So that's why it forced the situation, the stepping down forced the hand of the board into either having to move Happy to a different committee, or to benefit from her insight and input and background on the finance committee to accommodate by expanding the committee to 4. So that's where it's not punitive at all. It's just that's what we're stuck with, and we've actually accommodated rather than choosing to ask Happy to move over.
Not to belabor, but it appears punitive when you ask someone that has a passion in that particular, or maybe not passion, just expertise, to make way for someone else since they chose not to be the chair. But we can move on. That's just
Also,
an
it's at
passion.
your discretion.
Right.
Right, so there's no action actually needed.
No, actually, it's not true. According to
Appointments are-
the attorney,
they can be
it
voted
says that it's subject to board, according to bylaw 9450, I do not see a limit on the number of board members who may serve on a committee. Therefore, an option to add a board member to the committee and designate that new committee member as chair of the committee would be subject to board approval in accordance to that bylaw.
So that's what we will be voting on next week.
No, we're
Or
next
next
night.
night.
No, we'll be voting
Oh,
tonight, but
okay.
there's another amendment on the table.
Just vote then. If you guys want to
On-
vote me
Well,
off the
Well,
committee, vote me off the
I
committee.
think, I
That's
think
fine.
you asked for other input, and I frankly, being the consensus builder, that's my job. I think it's important that everybody have a voice if they need one,
Absolutely.
or would like one.
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in real quick. I don't want to belabor the issue. As I understand it, one is I serve on the finance committee. I chair the personnel committee. I cannot chair the finance committee, at least not without causing significant disruption into what's already occurring. And I think by the nodding of heads, I think there's general understanding about that. I agree with the recommendation to move Kurt to the chair for all the reasons that have been stated. And I also understand the dilemma that we have and sort of the mediated approach that we're trying to take to accomplish both recognizing you have the right and the prerogative to withdraw as chair, and that has to be honored as far as I'm concerned. But my understanding is also that the bylaws simply do not speak one way or the other to what we are to do in this situation, and it does not require us necessarily to keep a dynamic of 3 or an odd number of 5. So we do have the ability to, at least for a time period, keep this 4-person dynamic in place. My feeling is it is not desirable. Personalities and people aside, it is not desirable to have 4 people. On balance, and because the bylaws don't speak either way, I think it is an appropriate temporary solution given where we are in the budget. I would not like to see this sustained further. So something either along the lines of what Greg is suggesting, or just a general reassessment of it, of the numbering, regardless of personalities, should be done at the end of May 31st. Maybe leave any name designation out and just say we need to reassess the number
Mhm.
to get it back to the odd number, because I do think that is an appropriate approach for a board to have. Whether it's 3, I think 5 is getting too big, so I think there's some, reasonableness to have it 3. So I would do support it because I think it's a good, balanced, and temporary resolution.
I agree with what Tom said.
Yeah, I agree with the motion. Look, I just want to say, let's be productive. I think Happy is smart, fearless, and principled. She says she does feel she can be effective. As a chair, then we'll take her at her word and move on.
I would also add my experience, and I agree with what Galen just said. Happy is very confident. And I was saddened when you decided, but I recognize your right to and prerogative to resign as chair. You are an invaluable contributor to that, and I've seen that both in the finance committee and other work. So that's partly the reason why your voice still needs a place in these financial discussions.
Do we have a motion or want to have a motion without using any names to say that we should sunset a 4 voting member finance committee by May 31st?
Can I ask a question? Is it necessary? Because if we could hold a vote to add a member, why can't we hold a vote to change it later? And so is
I
that really
think it's-
necessary to have a sunset provision?
So just given the amount of discussion that we all seem to have around committees, et cetera, and the work of the board, it holds us back. Let's be honest. And I think if we decide this now, then we know going forward that it's not an ongoing theme. And so personally, and I'm one person, I feel like we need to make a decision and move forward. I don't think it's an unreasonable amendment to make. And it'll give us the opportunity to see. Now, that is the sunset date. If we decide at that point that we want a new amendment on the table or a new structure in that committee, then let's raise that then. But I think just given the way things have gone lately, I think being as concrete as we can is the best way to go.
And it's certainly not without precedent when you consider the facilities committee was created with a sunset, so.
So, the motion on the table, as I understand it, is a motion to approve. How about if we have a motion to approve Kirk as the temporary chair of the Finance Committee until May 31st, 2019?
I think it's important for Kirk to be a part of what we are deciding. So
Kirk-
are we doing this now?
Kirk was very much a part, and I spoke with him before he left.
Okay, I
to
still would
get-
want his input.
But in the meantime, Violet, that means that the committee can't meet on the first finance meeting.
Can't
So
meet?
that, it has a major impact on the entire district.
They can't meet,
They're-
or they
they're
can meet and
meeting-
they don't have a chairperson.
Our bylaws say that you need to have a chair.
But can't you be that temporary chair?
Oh, I can add that to my, literally, I've been here since 7:15 this morning. My father is in the hospital. Why, I don't understand when we've discussed it with Kirk, he knows what's happening. I'm very confident, and I wouldn't say this otherwise. I just feel like the work of this district, what we were elected to do, for the teachers that we serve, for the parents that we serve, for the children that we serve, need us to work cohesively and to move the ball forward. So that, if you want to delay it, you can certainly raise that motion. That is my feeling, is we have people relying on us to do our job.
And I would like input from Kirk, because here we are talking about him and he's not here, and
But you
I know
caucused
you
this
guys have
afternoon,
spoken
didn't you?
with him. If you know more about his,
I can represent, I spoke to him this morning, and he conveyed to me that he is happy to depart the Curriculum and Student Success Committee, jump over to the Finance Committee and serve as chair.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know he was leaving.
He's not leaving curriculum, he's staying.
But, you stay, but to not chair it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
He doesn't
So
chair it.
No, he's
Violet,
chair.
Violet, is your concern that About the amendment or about Kirk's willingness to serve as temporary chair?
Well, I'm interested his willingness to serve, I understand that's been confirmed. As far as the end date, I'm not sure, has that been shared with him? Has an opinion been given?
That's not, yeah, I think procedurally.
The amendment for a minute, because I think that it's maybe gotten more confused because of that.
It has to be done differently.
Can I suggest that the amendment would be as follows? Specifically, and I can go slowly so it's really clear, and maybe we can write it down or something, that we're voting on PERC being added to the committee. That's item one. That we are voting, and this is all in one motion. PERC being added to the committee, PERC being named as chair of the committee. That third item is we are agreeing that the committee will be a 4-person committee and will revert to being a 3-person committee on May 31st, 2019.
Period.
And be reviewed by the board at that time.
And how was that date decided?
Something like that at the end.
It's the end of it's the end of the budget season. The referendum will have happened by then.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was unclear earlier because it sounded like we were saying Kirk was temporarily going to be the chair, but I don't think that's the intention here.
Correct.
Although the board could certainly reconsider at the May 31st or approximate reconsideration. I think the clarity here is that it will revert to a 3-person committee, which is what I was trying to indicate before, is what I would be comfortable with, and I think I heard a couple other voices say as well.
I would be comfortable.
And the 3-person
That is the motion on the
committee
table.
would be,
Should we determine that at that point? I'm going to call the vote. I can do that.
Someone, well, you can't do that.
Call the question?
Just real quick, who made the original motion?
I did.
Okay, so you have to agree to the amendment.
I accept that as a friendly amendment.
And then if you want to call the question, we have to have a 2/3 vote to call the question and stop discussion.
Can we just vote on the motion?
No.
Okay.
Not unless everyone agrees to the discussion, so
Okay.
if you can also ask.
Is the discussion over?
Unanimously, yes.
Yes, the discussion is over. So that is the motion on the table. Can someone move it?
So moved.
Or you can move, you just hold the vote.
Oh. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstain? Motion carries. It was, I didn't see or hear. Okay. Motion carries. Any old business? Any future agenda items? Meetings or dates of importance are attached. I need a motion to enter into executive session to discuss district security.
So moved.
Second.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Greg.